the mental transmitter of Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 326 Bigger Trouble. As Medusa's voice fell, everyone in the Atlan royal court fell into deep thought. The Inhumans practiced a strict caste system, with lower caste Inhumans even worse off than slaves. However, this did not mean that Inhumans had no feelings for their compatriots. On the contrary, due to the unique nature of the Inhuman population and their long-standing genetic defects, Inhumans placed greater emphasis on the safety of their own kind and were more united. 100,000 newly born Inhumans represented a force unimaginable to ordinary people, and the Inhuman royal family would never allow them to wander on Earth. However, along with this enormous opportunity came a problem. Basic necessities aside, the uncontrollable mutation of Inhumans was also a matter that had to be carefully considered. Bringing back an Inhuman who posed a significant threat would undoubtedly be a disaster for Atlan. After a while, everyone's brows furrowed ever more tightly, and no one spoke. Alex paid little attention to the Inhumans' internal affairs. After giving them a brief explanation, he turned his attention back to Nick Fury. "What are you going to do with these 100,000 people? Detain them and perform autopsies?" Nick Fury, guessing Alex had informed Atlan, breathed a sigh of relief, shrugged, and sank into his chair. His tense expression instantly softened, and he even managed a sneer. "You know, that's what they're best at." Alex laughed along, the sarcasm evident. Nick Fury raised his single eye slightly and added, "They even brought in Stryker, that pervert." For this, Alex rolled his eyes. The Inhumans were not to be trifled with. Besides the various superpowers granted to them by the Terry Mist, their technology was also incredibly advanced. If humans dared to provoke the Inhumans, they would definitely face disaster. You'd better warn them. You know the Inhumans' intricacies, mindful of the potential consequences. Alex offered a warning. A flicker of indignation crossed Nick Fury's face, then he quickly regained his composure. "They're courting death. Let them." Seeing that Nick Fury showed no interest in continuing the conversation, Alex saw no reason to. Pointing to Eric, who lay unconscious nearby, he changed the subject. "Let's find a place to lock him up. You've found the right person this time." Nick Fury glanced at Eric, his face brimming with pride. Because superpowered crimes are becoming increasingly frequent, SHIELD has been planning to build a special prison to house these criminals for several years. Alex smiled wryly at this. He knew that the majority of the superpowered crimes Nick Fury was referring to were committed by mutants. Before most superheroes appeared, mutants were the largest superpowered group, the only group. Their mixed bag of qualities fueled humanity's hatred of them. As his thoughts wandered, Alex suddenly felt his body jerked, as if he'd been pushed. Alex snapped awake and turned to see Nick Fury, who had suddenly approached him, a mysterious expression on his face. "What's wrong?" Alex looked at Nick Fury with some confusion, unsure of what he was up to. Nick Fury glanced around cautiously, then leaned in close to Alex's ear and whispered, "According to unreliable sources, the attitudes of nations around the world towards people with superpowers have taken a sharp turn for the worse due to the Apocalypse incident. Many are secretly preparing to take action against them." After a brief pause, Nick Fury seemed to recall something and added, "The appearance of those 100,000 mutants has only exacerbated these people's concerns. They'll undoubtedly take action within 2 to 3 years." Alex trembled at the words, his eyes turning red. His aura erupted, sending Nick Fury and Eric flying. Nick Fury didn't expect Alex to react so strongly. His face changed drastically, and while trying to stand up and get closer to Alex, he kept comforting Alex. "Don't get excited, Alex." Alex's momentum erupted quickly and disappeared just as quickly. As soon as Nick Fury finished speaking, the terrifying majesty that permeated the entire office vanished, and the instigator sat calmly on the sofa, as if nothing had happened, but the anger deep in his eyes could never be eliminated. "Tell me more." Alex, regaining his composure, took a deep breath, turned to Nick Fury, and said seriously, "I'd like to know how they plan to deal with us." Nick Fury chuckled dryly and sat down next to Alex. He patted Alex's shoulder and said in a low voice, "I told you before that William Stryker had been developing Sentinel robots to target mutants, but he suddenly halted the project and disappeared." As he spoke, Nick Fury's expression gradually grew serious. "Until recently, he reappeared, seemingly full of confidence." "So you didn't know that?" Alex was a little surprised. Even with SHIELD's intelligence capabilities, they had no way of knowing. This William Stryker had some skills, not the useless guy he portrayed in the movies. Nick Fury shrugged and said helplessly, "That guy reports directly to the US government. SHIELD can't get too involved. It's taboo." SHIELD's unique nature meant it couldn't belong to any single country. Yet, it was also subject to oversight by various governments, making many matters impossible to delve into or touch. Alex remained silent after hearing this, then spoke for a long moment. "I'll leave Eric in your care. Keep an eye on him." With that, Alex vanished. Reappearing, he had already arrived in Atlan. Just then, Alex realized that Medusa and the others had made a decision. So, is there a conclusion? Alex's gaze swept across the group, finally settling on Medusa. Medusa reached out and stroked her hair, smiling calmly. "We can't give up on 100,000 mutants, so we've decided to bring them all back to Atlan." Alex wasn't overly surprised by Medusa's words, but rather a bit worried. Given Atlan's current situation, if these 100,000 people were to settle there, I'm afraid, the combined power of 100,000 people was immense. Consider that Atlan's total population was only a few 100,000, and half of them were lower-class people who hadn't undergone the Terrigen Mist mutation. This massive disparity in numbers could easily lead to a situation where the enemy couldn't be defeated. "So, we have to take them away in batches," Medusa smiled confidently and explained. Alex frowned slightly, somewhat puzzled. "Humans won't give you time. In fact, they are already preparing to surround and kill these 100,000 new mutants." After thinking for a moment, Alex added with a hint of sarcasm, "Although human technology is not particularly advanced, it is unique in terms of destruction. Alex City will be rebuilt to accommodate the new mutants." Medusa was still confident, the smile on her face never fading. "When the time comes, I'll have to trouble you, Alex." Alex smiled bitterly and shook his head, saying helplessly, "I can promise you, but our situation is also not good." Chapter 327 Aliens. In just 2 weeks, the former Alex City on Mount Everest had been renovated and revitalized. While not as magnificent as it had been in its heyday, it was at least habitable. With a temporary base ready, the next task was to rescue the 100,000 newly born Inhumans. Yes, rescue them. The humans' swiftness was unimaginable. 3 days after Alex received the news from Nick Fury, they had unleashed their might on the 100,000 newly born Inhumans. With lightning speed, they had captured them all in a single day, leaving Atlan no time to react. The news stunned not only Alex and Atlan, but also forces like the Hellfire Club and the Brotherhood of Mutants, who were also horrified by the humans' display of power. For a moment, the world fell silent, and no force dared to venture forth. Except, of course, Atlan. Black Bolt personally led a rescue team of Atlan's elite Inhumans to Earth, joined by Alex and nearly 90% of the X-Men. Inside the newly constructed Alex City, Alex looked across at Black Bolt with a hint of embarrassment, then hesitantly said, "Sorry, we still haven't found anything." 2 days had passed since the capture of the 100,000 newborn Inhumans. Alex had searched numerous locations, but sadly, there was no information at all, where the 100,000 newborn Inhumans were being held, or the details of the battle that day. Perhaps the Observer knew, but he certainly wouldn't reveal it. Medusa, still following Black Bolt, felt a mixture of disappointment and frustration upon hearing Alex's words. Rubbing her swollen head, she repeated in disbelief, "Alex, I still don't believe they were defeated by humans. Actually, I don't believe it either." Alex's face was filled with bitterness. Searching through his memories of past lives, he couldn't imagine how humans had managed to capture 100,000 newly born Inhumans in a single day. Yet, there it was. 100,000 newly born Inhumans were inexplicably defeated in a single day, then vanished from the earth without a trace. After muttering a few more words, Medusa gradually regained her composure. Frowning, she asked, "What are the humans saying?" For the safety of the 100,000 newly born Inhumans, Medusa had revealed a small glimpse of the Inhuman strength through Alex, hoping to coerce them into submission. "I've already passed a message to Nick Fury. I think they should know by now," Alex thought to himself, his mood darkening. "But from what I know about the humans, I'm afraid they won't agree, especially now that they've gained such immense power." Alex had always believed that using force to coerce the humans was a bad idea. But surprisingly, the humans finally compromised. Nick Fury, director of SHIELD, arrived in Alex City as their negotiating representative, bearing humanity's sincerity. What's going on? Alex was convinced of his own judgment, even suspecting a human conspiracy. Is this a human conspiracy? What are they up to? Faced with Alex's relentless questioning, Nick Fury gave a wry smile. After signaling Medusa to dismiss the others, he finally began to explain. This conversation lasted for nearly half an hour. Alex, Medusa, and the few others who remained were all frozen in silence. If it weren't for the occasional blink of their eyes, one would almost think they were dead. It's an alien. After a while, Alex finally came back to life, with a hint of surprise and a touch of fear in his tone of disbelief. Only by witnessing the true space empire can one understand that the Earth is just a tiny speck of dust in the entire universe. It is also understood that if the space empire wants to destroy the Earth, it is as easy as crushing an ant. In the past, the Earth was protected by special restrictions, and other aliens could not set foot in the Earth's space. Now that aliens have appeared on the Earth and are openly kidnapping 100,000 newborn aliens, does this mean that the special restrictions have disappeared, and the Earth is completely exposed to the entire universe, and destruction will follow? Thinking of this, Alex couldn't stop shaking all over, and his face turned pale. Yes, aliens. Very, very powerful aliens. Nick Fury knew what Alex was thinking. His expression darkened, and with a hint of resignation, he said with a wry smile, so powerful that humans have been forced to put aside their hatred for you and seek cooperation instead. We'll talk about cooperation later. Before Nick Fury could continue, Medusa, who had been listening in a daze, suddenly interrupted. I just want to know why the aliens took them away. Nick Fury shook his head decisively. They appeared so unexpectedly and left so quickly, leaving no trace at all. Tell me about these aliens so I can see if I recognize them. Alex had wandered the universe for decades, after all, and had a certain understanding of all kinds of aliens. Nick Fury frowned, a faint glint in his single eye. He concentrated for a moment before describing them. They look quite human, but their skin is a little strange. It's blue. Before Nick Fury could finish, Alex suddenly stood up and screamed, the Kree Empire. The Kree's blue skin was their most distinctive feature, setting them apart from other races in the universe. The Kree Empire? Why does it sound so familiar? Medusa frowned at the term, pondering it with a troubled expression. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration struck her, and a term that appeared sporadically in Inhuman history came to mind. Kree, the origin of the Inhumans. Medusa's voice seemed to turn on a switch for the Inhumans. His Highness Alex jumped up shortly after, his face strangely expressionless, as if he were crying. Alex was bewildered, his eyes shifting between Medusa and His Highness, hesitant to speak. Medusa didn't disappoint Alex, and once she recovered, she began to explain. Rumor has it that the Inhumans originated from the Kree. Alex no longer cared about these secrets. His mind was flooded with news about the Kree Empire. The Kree Empire spanned the northwest lobe of the large Magellanic Cloud and encompassed thousands of vassal states, an immense space empire. Recalling this information, Alex waved his hand to interrupt Medusa and Nick Fury's meaningless conversation. With a serious expression, he asked, Human, how do you wish to cooperate? Chapter 328 Earth Defender. Medusa and the others seemed to want to stop discussing the Kree Empire. They paused, their gazes turning to Nick Fury, their expressions deeply concerned. They're terrified by the aliens, so, Nick Fury paused, his gaze sweeping between Alex and Medusa, a look of inexplicable melancholy on his face. They want you to protect Earth in the event of an alien invasion. That seems a bit ridiculous. Alex was stunned, then a look of deep suspicion. Nick Fury nodded in agreement. Yes, I think so, but that's what they want. He smiled wryly and shook his head, saying with some resignation, there's really no other way. Facing such powerful aliens, I'm afraid you're the only ones who stand a chance of victory. What do we get? Alex thought for a moment, then asked a very practical question. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Nick Fury seemed to have anticipated Alex's question, and immediately responded, recognize your status and guarantee your rights, just like all humans. Alex nodded expressionlessly, and after a moment, he spoke, okay, this is the condition we, the Mutant House, agree to. Alex's response left Medusa, His Highness Alex, and the others standing by in disbelief. Even Nick Fury looked bewildered, unable to believe Alex's agreement. It was truly unexpected. Alex, you have to think it over. His Highness Alex couldn't help but plead. He knew the Kree Empire was powerful, and it was simply not something Alex could resist. Nick Fury stared at Alex silently. Though he didn't say it out loud, his eyes and expression told him to refuse. "Don't worry, I know what's going on." Alex was initially worried that the Kree Empire would attack Earth immediately, but then he thought, the Kree Empire came and went, which didn't look like an invasion at all. It seemed that the Earth Protection Agreement had not been broken, and there were at least a few years left, enough time for Alex to do a lot. Seeing Alex so determined, no one could persuade him. Nick Fury chatted briefly for a few minutes and then left, anxious to take the news back. After learning of Alex's decision, Medusa remained silent, her brow furrowed, and she kept glancing at Alex from time to time, her expression solemn, as if she was thinking about something. "What are your plans?" Watching Nick Fury leave, Medusa finally couldn't help her curiosity and stared at Alex to ask, "Humans are not easy to deal with. They are very good at crossing the river and destroying the bridge. Once their technology is improved, their attitude towards mutants will be the same as it is now." Alex showed a faint smile on his face, with a confident look. "At least in the next 3 to 5 years, they will not and dare not take action." As he spoke, Alex's whole body shook, and a powerful aura burst out from his body, standing tall and straight. 3 to 5 years is enough to reverse the situation of mutants. Humans won't let you get your wish. Medusa shook her head, not believing that Alex could succeed, and even took the Inhumans as an example. For thousands of years, the Inhumans have witnessed a lot. Alex was still full of confidence. "It depends on how you do it. Believe me, you will succeed. It's up to you." Medusa sighed and immediately changed the subject, with a puzzled expression on her face. "What are you going to do about the Kree Empire? Within 3 to 5 years, the Kree Empire will not appear on Earth again." Alex said this in a decisive tone, and then briefly explained the special nature of the Earth and the universe, as well as the vaguely existing protection agreement. The Kree who appeared on Earth this time should only be the vanguard. Upon hearing that the Kree Empire would not invade on a large scale for a while, Medusa, His Highness Alex, and other Inhumans all breathed a sigh of relief, and then asked, "Then why are they capturing new Inhumans? This should be related to the evolution of the Kree." Alex deliberately paused here, feeling that the restrictions set by Adam in his body did not stop him, and then continued to explain. "Many years ago, the two major space empires, the Skrull Empire and the Kree Empire, broke out in a war. The evolution of the Kree was completely stopped in the war. Capturing new Inhumans is probably to achieve a breakthrough in genetic technology, thereby breaking the frozen evolution of the Kree." Upon hearing about experimental research, the image of white mice immediately popped up in Medusa's mind. Her face turned pale and she immediately stood up and shouted, "No, we have to save them. We don't have a star map, so we can't find the Kree Empire," Alex said gravely, shaking his head. "Besides, even if we knew the Kree's location, we don't have a spaceship. Neither Earth's technology nor Atlan's is capable of building a ship capable of interstellar flight." This statement left Medusa speechless. Just as Medusa was overcome with grief and despair, Alex suddenly smiled again and said slowly, "But don't worry. Genetic research will rarely endanger their lives." Medusa was startled, then came to her senses. Genetic experiments weren't traditional experiments. A small blood draw would provide enough sample, and there was no risk of life. Medusa was relieved, but Alex suddenly remembered something he had almost forgotten. Crystal had been sitting nearby, speaking very little. Noticing Alex's sudden change of expression, she immediately tensed up. She reached out and grabbed Alex's arm, asking with concern, "What's wrong, Alex?" "Crystal, do you remember Mr. Sinister?" Just as they were discussing genetic experiments, a flash of inspiration struck Alex. He suddenly remembered that he had given a vial of blood to none other than Mr. Sinister. Crystal had apparently forgotten about Mr. Sinister, and only after Alex reminded her several times did she remember him. After remembering, Crystal finally understood why Alex had acted so strangely, and her expression immediately grew tense. "Is he okay?" Alex shook his head, indicating he had no idea. His expression grew more serious, and he said in a deep voice, "No matter what, we need to find him as soon as possible." When he had given his blood, Alex had intentionally left a psychic mark on Mr. Sinister, intending to deal with him immediately after the apocalypse. But a series of events that happened afterwards made Alex have no time to take care of other things. If it weren't for the flash of inspiration just now, Alex would have almost forgotten about Mr. Sinister. When he thought of Mr. Sinister, Alex immediately tried to activate the mind mark so that he could be teleported to Mr. Sinister and end the battle quickly. But what Alex didn't expect was that the mind mark was invalid and the mind transmission also failed. In the next few days, Alex wandered around the Earth, trying to find Mr. Sinister and the Supreme Evolution, but unfortunately he found nothing. At this time, the human side officially decided to give Alex and the X-Men a high-sounding name, the Defenders of the Earth. I'm not in good shape, so I'll update once today and make up for it tomorrow. Chapter 329 Mutants and Magicians. Alex was forced to temporarily halt his search for Mr. Sinister and return to his work with the X-Men, worthy of their title as Defenders of Earth. Alex, you're getting involved in such a minor matter. Alex, following behind him, rolled his eyes in frustration as he watched the robbery unfold. We're the X-Men, not the police. We're the X-Men, and we're superheroes, Alex said with a smile, but he had already rushed over to the threatening robber and subdued him with a single punch. After comforting the victim, Alex disappeared into the New York night. In an old villa on the outskirts of New York, a group of uniformed X-Men sat or lay bored, their faces etched with deep exhaustion. When will this end? Raimi leaned back in his chair, flipping the cards in his hand like a butterfly, his still handsome face etched with annoyance. If this keeps up, I'll go crazy. Raimi Lebo, once the Tarzan of the X-Men, was now the X-Men's king of cards, a master of unparalleled power. This remark resonated with many. These days, they'd been doing nothing, roaming the world day and night, punishing evil and promoting good. They'd slain countless local thugs and supercriminals. What's there to complain about? Alex, who had just returned and heard the X-Men's shouts, couldn't help but shout, "We're doing this for the future of mutant kind." Seeing Alex return, the X-Men suddenly felt awkward, exchanging glances, and Charles was pushed out. "We all know your intentions, but..." Charles stood up, meeting Alex's gaze, and said helplessly, "But if this goes on endlessly, no one can bear it." It wasn't that he was physically tired, but rather that he was mentally exhausted by all the trivial matters. Alex's eyes suddenly changed, sharp as an eagle. He swept everyone present one by one and said sternly, "Let me give you an old Chinese saying, do not refrain from doing good deeds, even if they are small, and do not commit evil deeds, even if they are small." Before the X-Men could apologize with shame on their faces, Alex continued, "Now is the time to lay the foundation. We just need to get through this period. From now on, we will only handle cases involving superpowers or other tasks that humans cannot accomplish." Hearing Alex's words, the X-Men finally showed a sense of relief. They had been tortured these past few days, otherwise they would not have contradicted Alex. "By the way, Remy, when you're done with this, come back to X-Film." Seeing everyone laugh, Alex locked eyes with Remy and said, "You're a Hollywood star, but you can't waste your time like this." X-Film had always been controlled by the House of Mutants, but after repeated conflicts between mutants and humans, X-Film had been forced to transform and had now become a regular Hollywood film studio. Now with government support, Alex decided to relaunch X-Film and strengthen positive mutant propaganda. Remy's smile froze, and he wailed, "No, I don't want to make a movie. That's not your call." With that, Alex left the X-Men base in New York and returned to the Uncanny Valley in a flash. After the renovations, the valley had completely transformed, a vast city taking shape. However, the valley was deserted and sparsely populated, with most of the mutants having been sent away by Alex. To integrate mutants into human society, government support alone wasn't enough. Mutants also had to go out and actively integrate into human society, so that ordinary people could accept and adapt to their existence. Alex also encouraged some mutants to volunteer in government departments, from research institutes to intelligence agencies, even as small clerks. X Academy is almost finished. Do we really need to do this? Alex was lost in thought when Emma appeared beside him, looking a little dazed. Isn't this a big move? I'm afraid, Alex interrupted Emma with a smile, confidently saying, this will be Hogwarts for mutants. Humans can love wizards, so why can't they accept mutants? By this time, the first Harry Potter film had become a global phenomenon, and wizards in top hats and robes had become beloved characters for all humanity. That's different, Alex. Emma's expression didn't soften, but only deepen with worry. They're just fiction, and we're real. Then make them real, Alex uttered slowly, his eyes as deep as the ocean. Humans fear mutants because we possess the power that scares them. But what if they possess the same power? What are you going to do? Emma looked at Alex, bewildered. There will be a Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry under the X Academy. Emma was horrified, looking at Alex in disbelief. This is Pandora's box. It will destroy the world. Humans are selfish and greedy, especially adept at destruction and war. If humans were to wield the power of magic, the consequences would be disastrous. The hand of fate is in our hands. Seeing Emma's fearful expression, Alex smiled gently and explained, learning magic isn't as simple as you think. Even with a vast number of humans, only a handful can truly achieve anything. Are you sure? Emma was still skeptical. The human population was simply too vast, and quantitative change could easily lead to qualitative change. Furthermore, humans were highly adept at learning and summarizing. While magic might not be suitable for widespread human learning right now, they could certainly find another path that suited them. Magic is different from science. There are no shortcuts. Alex was practicing magic, and magic and science were fundamentally separate systems. Emma nodded hesitantly, her expression clearly unsure. There's nothing to worry about. Hogwarts won't open for the time being. Alex gently hugged Emma and said comfortingly, besides, the admission power is in our hands, and we can strictly control the number of wizards. Most importantly, we are the teachers. Besides, the training of mutants is much faster than that of magicians. Alex reached out and stroked Emma's face with a sly smile on his face. Mutants are naturally higher than humans in starting point. As long as they reproduce more, magicians will always be suppressed by mutants. Looking at the smile on Alex's face, Emma was stunned at first, then reacted, with a look of both laughter and tears. Chapter 330 Stephen Strange. Over 2 years passed unnoticed. The transformed Mystic Valley was no longer deserted. Instead, it was bustling with activity. Countless young men and women crisscrossed the vast academy city, some soaring through the air, others gliding on ice paths, and even riding broomsticks. The atmosphere was bustling with activity. 2 years prior, the academy city had been completed, and X-Academy had opened its doors, bringing tens of thousands of mutant children from around the world. A year later, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry finally opened, much to the anticipation of humanity. Immediately, tens of millions of humans applied, and after testing, over 100,000 showed a natural aptitude for magic. However, Alex ultimately accepted only 10,000 of these. 10,000 magic apprentices, combined with the tens of thousands of mutant children who had arrived the year before, brought the vast academy city to a tumultuous climax. Suddenly, a melodious bell rang, and the wandering young men and women rushed towards the academy. Within moments, the academy city had returned to its peaceful state. In a spacious classroom at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, west of the academy city, Alex leisurely stood at the podium, watching the children enter one after another with a gentle smile on his face. In the past 2 years, the world had undergone significant changes. Alex was particularly pleased to see that the status of mutants had changed dramatically. At least now, mutants could walk the streets openly without fear of insults or attacks. After all the seats were occupied, Alex regained his composure. He glanced at everyone with a gentle gaze, then coughed softly and began, "Today, I'll be teaching you about formations." Besides being the nominal leader of the mutant house, Alex also served as the headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. For this school, Alex had spent a year practicing the Ancient One's magic, while also teaching a few students, including 3 of Vivian Lee's daughters. Finally, by the time the school opened, he had gathered 10 magic teachers. To be honest, Alex wasn't a very qualified teacher. But the hundreds of students densely packed below listened with rapt interest, their eyes sparkling with a dazzling brilliance. Unnoticed, the class ended with a familiar ring of the bell. Alex concluded the lesson without further ado, his telepathic transmission vanishing. Seeing Alex's swift departure, a middle-aged man stood up from his seat, his expression a bit startled, as if in disbelief. Before he could recover, a group of young boys and girls immediately surrounded him, chirping and shouting in righteous indignation, "Stephen, you must teach those guys from Academy X a lesson today. Strange, you're the strongest in our magic academy. You must defeat that one-eyed man." Another voice chimed in, its tone childish, like a younger brother complaining to his older brother. "He embarrassed me last time. Don't let him go." Stephen Strange, now in his 30s, was once a brilliant neurosurgeon, but a car accident had left him unable to wield a scalpel properly. Desperate to heal his hands, Stephen traveled far and wide, seeking the help of renowned doctors from around the world, all to no avail. In desperation, Stephen journeyed to the Academy City, hoping to restore his hands through the power of mutants. By some strange coincidence, Stephen was admitted to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, becoming the only older student, over 30, in the academy and the entire academy. Stephen's magical talent was exceptional. In just 7 months, his magical abilities surpassed those of all students who had studied at the academy for more than a year. As a result, Stephen became the leader of the academy's students, and the responsibility of communicating with House X fell upon him. However, Stephen was completely oblivious to all this, allowing himself to be pushed forward by the group of children. Alex's voice echoed in his mind, "Stephen, come see me tonight, Stephen, they're coming." Stephen was lost in thought when a sudden shout jolted him awake. Stephen regained consciousness and looked up. A group of mutant children were approaching him. Leading the way was a tall figure wearing a pair of ruby-red glasses. It was none other than the Cyclops, known to everyone as One Eyes, one of the most powerful mutants at X School. Cyclops, whose full name was Scott Summers, could unleash powerful red shockwaves from his eyes. However, Scott couldn't control this power, forcing him to wear the ruby glasses constantly. Stephen had been in Academy City for 7 months and was familiar with Cyclops Scott Summers. He took the initiative to greet him. "Hello, Scott." He glanced past Scott and nodded to the group behind him. It was undeniable that mutants possessed far greater innate advantages than humans. Currently, Stephen was the only one who could truly lead the entire Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Meanwhile, at X School, there were countless powerful individuals, numbering on the fingers of one hand. Stephen felt a little gloomy at the thought, but then his spirits returned. Mutants are indeed powerful now, but Stephen firmly believes that magic's potential is limitless, its path endless, and that one day magic will triumph over mutants' innate abilities. As the two forces clashed, Alex, perched atop a tower in the heart of the academy, stood facing the wind, his gaze piercing the endless buildings until he finally fixed on the battlefield where the two forces clashed. "They're fighting again. Are you really just going to ignore it?" Behind Alex, Audrey frowned slightly, her expression slightly concerned. Stephen is the only one who's doing well at the Magic Academy, the others are far behind. As a teacher at the academy, Audrey clearly cared more about her students. "I think Alex is keeping it to himself. He should teach them those powerful spells too." Monroe, another academy teacher, pouted, looking displeased. "The Magic Academy can't be so weak that they're constantly being bullied by the other academy." For safety reasons, Alex didn't teach his full knowledge to humans. Many powerful spells remained secret, passed down only to Monroe and a few other teachers Alex trusted, and they were strictly forbidden to teach privately. Alex smiled bitterly at this and was about to explain when Vivian Lee began to rebuke Monroe. "Monroe, don't talk nonsense. Alex is doing this for the good of humanity." Monroe, of course, understood Alex's intentions, but every time she saw the Magic Academy fighting each other, she felt deeply annoyed. Of course, even so, Monroe never overstepped her bounds. "Don't worry, I will strengthen the teaching of the Magic Academy in the future." Looking back at Monroe's pouting look, Alex couldn't help but reach out and hugged Monroe, chuckled and comforted. "After more than a year of observation, I have almost seen their nature clearly. It's time to go further." Monroe jumped up excitedly when she heard the words, rushed into Alex's arms, kissed Alex's mouth fiercely, and let go after a long while, and couldn't help shouting with joy, "I love you so much, Alex." More and more superheroes appear, opening the era of superheroes. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 331, School Dispute. Monroe and Alex were together for a while. Monroe looked up at Alex with a flushed face, and her eyes involuntarily glanced into the distance, with a hint of worry. "What about now? Let them do it. Don't you think this is a good thing?" Alex turned his head to look at the girls around him, with a faint smile on his face. Because of the competition between each other, their progress in this period of time is obvious to all, whether it is the Magic Academy or the X Academy. The girls were stunned at first, then nodded, with a look of agreement on their faces. "So, I'm planning to hold a competition within the Academy. Students from both Academy X and the Academy of Magic can participate. The victorious student will receive the title of Academy Star and will be personally coached by me." Alex watched the two sides about to fight in the distance, his smile growing wider and wider. He took the opportunity to tell them the plan he had been preparing for a long time. At the same time, there will be a comprehensive evaluation of the academies, and the academy with the most winners will receive special awards. Alex, so you already had this plan? Vivian Lee punched Alex's chest indignantly, with a charming smile on her face. You've made us worry for so long, afraid that something might happen. Alex shook his head and explained seriously, that's unfair. I just had this idea on a whim when I saw them fighting so fiercely. He paused slightly, his expression slightly hesitant. Doing this has great advantages, but also many disadvantages. If we're not careful, it will ruin the efforts of the past 2 years and further exacerbate the conflict between humans and mutants. Perhaps at first, the exchange between the two sides was just a normal competition, but over time, relations would inevitably deteriorate, potentially even turning into mortal enemies. Alex had seen this sort of thing many times in movies and novels. It shouldn't be that bad, right? Vivian Lee immediately grew worried upon hearing Alex's words. Less is worse than more. I think we'd better not have this competition. 2 years of hard work had yielded remarkable results, and Vivian Lee truly didn't want to see it ruined. Haven't we been strengthening our ideological studies? They've been fighting for over a year, and there haven't been any problems, Monroe said confidently, nonchalantly. And maybe, as they fight, their relationship has become even better. As they spoke, 2 red beams suddenly lit up in the distance, Scott's signature red beams. Looks like they've started fighting, Alex whispered. Before the woman could react, he activated teleportation, bringing them directly to the battlefield. Watching from up close was a completely different experience, the contrast in momentum between the two sides becoming even more pronounced. Academy X might not have the advantage in numbers, but every mutant exuded confidence and exuded a powerful aura. Meanwhile, the Magic Academy, with nearly double the number of members, though each displayed righteous indignation, their momentum was weak. A few even displayed timidity and fear, giving the impression of a vain, bluffing display. These guys are truly bringing shame to the Magic Academy. Monroe was furious, eager to charge and give these apprentices a beating. Alex had anticipated this, and just as Monroe was about to stand, she was pulled back. Just wait and see, don't worry, they'll gradually change. He soothed. Alex turned his gaze to the 2 figures clashing on the battlefield, his eyes gleaming with wonder as he sighed. Perhaps this time, the Magic Academy will win. Really? Vivian, Audrey, and Monroe were overjoyed, and they all turned to look at Alex, their faces brimming with hope. The 3 women's reaction was understandable. Since the Magic Academy's founding, such battles had occurred dozens of times, and without exception, the Magic Academy had always lost. As teachers at the Magic Academy, the 3 women held a grudge. Steven's exceptional magical talent, coupled with his tireless efforts and exceptional combat acumen, Alex observed Scott, who, under Steven's constant temptation, continuously released red beams, and shook her head in disappointment. If this continues, Scott will be worn out by Steven sooner or later. The red beams released by Scott's eyes consumed his internal energy. Once this energy was exhausted, Scott was a lamb to the slaughter, powerless to fight back. However, it was more likely that Scott's energy hadn't been fully depleted before his eyes could withstand the pressure, forcing him to cease his attacks. As Alex had predicted, after releasing dozens of red beams, Scott suddenly felt a sore eye. The red beams became increasingly difficult to release, and even Scott felt a pain throughout his head. The piercing pain was so intense that he almost fainted. Scott's dying? Alex's sharp eyes immediately noticed Scott's abnormality. He's really going to win? Monroe asked in disbelief, seemingly unable to believe Steven could win. Meanwhile, in the mutant camp, a girl in a red dress frowned and whispered, "Scott's going to lose, Jean." "What nonsense," someone immediately retorted. Jean pouted and was about to argue when another girl with darker skin and white hair beside her suddenly spoke up. "Indeed, Scott's done." "Aurora, even you say that?" Several exclamations echoed simultaneously, and everyone looked at the white-haired girl in disbelief. Aurora shrugged and slowly explained, "Scott's ability has its limits. Steven's constant dodging was just to draw him out with his constant red beams." Pointing at Scott, who is already rarely releasing red beams, Aurora pointed at him. "Scott has reached his limit now. Defeat is inevitable." Sure enough, within 5 minutes, an exhausted Scott was struck by Steven's magical lightning. He stumbled to the ground, his short hair standing on end, looking rather comical. For a moment, the scene fell silent. A full half-minute passed before thunderous cheers erupted from the Magic Academy camp. Hundreds of apprentices danced with excitement, some even shedding tears. Stephen, the protagonist, was hoisted up by the apprentices, tossed and tossed again and again. Meanwhile, Academy X fell into long, dead silence. After over a year of consecutive victories, Academy X experienced its first defeat, leaving the mutants bitter. Scott could have made many excuses for his defeat, perhaps even underestimated the enemy, but he chose not to. He slowly stood up and apologized to the mutants. "I'm sorry, I let you all down, Scott, it's okay." Someone immediately consoled Scott, while also mocking Stephen. Stephen was just dodging. Stephen had dodged for most of the previous battle. Scott didn't look happy at all. He frowned and added seriously, "Stephen is very strong. I might lose again if we do it again." As he spoke, Scott turned around and looked at Stephen, who was flying up into the sky. His eyes hidden under the ruby glasses were full of fighting spirit. "But I will try my best. Only one update today, and I will make up for it all tomorrow." Chapter 332 Logan's Traces. Scott's words stunned many of the mutants present. The strongest students at X Academy couldn't defeat an old man from the Magic Academy. Stephen, in the eyes of a group of 17 or 18-year-old boys and girls, looked like an old man. How could the ever-proud mutants accept this? "What do you think? We mutants can't afford to lose." Ororo glanced expressionlessly at the mutants behind him, snorted coldly, and said confidently, "You lose, so you lose. Go back and practice hard, and win again next time." "I'll go back and practice now." Scott glanced sideways at the still rejoicing magic apprentices, nodded resolutely, and without acknowledging anyone, he quickly disappeared into building. The others exchanged bewilderment, sighed, and turned away, though most followed Scott's back, seemingly having lost their focus on practice. Soon, there were no mutants left, only the group of magic apprentices still cheering. Stephen, however, was not among them. After enjoying himself with his classmates for a while, he excused himself and left. An elderly man amidst a crowd of young people, Stephen felt quite intrusive. Walking to the academy, Stephen kept glancing up at the horizon, a hint of nervousness on his face, muttering to himself, 5 o'clock, shouldn't that be evening? Remembering Alex's secret message to him, Stephen couldn't help but tremble with excitement. As soon as he finished speaking, Stephen immediately denied it. "It's only 5 o'clock, not even evening yet." Elsewhere, after watching Stephen and Scott's duel, Alex teleported away from the academy. "What happened? Why are you looking for me so urgently?" Alex leaned back on the sofa, looking at Nick Fury behind the desk across from him, and asked in surprise. "It's been so peaceful lately, it seems nothing's happened." Nick Fury lowered his head slightly, but remained silent. A blush crept across his dark face, and he looked utterly embarrassed. "What's wrong? Any trouble? Just tell me." It was rare to see Nick Fury in such an expression. Alex straightened his body with excitement, watching him with amusement, as if he were watching a monkey show. Nick Fury felt even more embarrassed upon hearing this. He hesitated for a long moment before letting out a long sigh and slowly uttering, "Magneto." He escaped. "No problem, Alex replied subconsciously, only to realize he had misheard. "What did you say, Nick?" "Eric escaped, with the help of Mystic Raven." At this point, Nick Fury didn't hold back any longer and told the whole story. Mystique sent some metal through a guard. Mystique didn't say the rest. Everyone could guess what she meant. "Eric, Raven, is this really God's will?" Alex said nothing, only sighing. Alex remembered that in the X-Men movies, Mystique had used this trip to rescue the imprisoned elderly Magneto. Nick Fury looked at Alex with some surprise, then added seriously, "But don't worry, I've already dispatched SHIELD's most elite soldiers, and they'll definitely recapture Magneto, so be it, he can't cause any trouble right now." Alex waved his hand nonchalantly, unconcerned with Eric's escape. Things are different now. Mutants have risen in stature, and the X-Men hold a pivotal position worldwide. Even the Hellfire Club has been forced to reshape itself and reintegrate into human society. What good is a mere brotherhood of mutants trying to revive? Alex looked at Nick Fury, speechless, and asked in surprise, "By the way, you didn't call me here just for this, did you?" "I found Logan." Nick Fury pulled a photo from the table and tossed it to Alex, a quizzical glint in his single eye. Logan had been roaming the world for years, and there had been no news of him in years. He hadn't appeared at all during the Apocalypse incident, and no one knew what had happened. Alex took the photo with a look of delight. Then, looking up at Nick Fury, his face filled with disbelief, he asked, "What happened to him?" In the photo, Logan looked disheveled, like a scavenger, his face covered in fur, and his features were completely unrecognizable. If it weren't for those signature adamantium claws, Alex wouldn't have believed it was Wolverine. "I don't know," Nick Fury shook his head, explaining with a wry smile. "When we found him, he'd lost his memory again. Our people wanted to bring him back, but he ran away." "Okay, I'll go find him." Alex was bewildered. According to his memory of the movie, Logan hadn't suffered much of a shock after receiving the adamantium claws, so how could he have lost his memory? After learning from Nick Fury where Logan had last disappeared, Alex teleported directly to his destination. It was a dense forest, damp and chilly, with the temperature dropping ridiculously low. Could it be the plot of the second film? The Japanese Silver Samurai. Alex's surroundings sparked a flash of inspiration, reminiscent of the plot of Logan 2, but then he became confused. But Logan didn't lose his memory back then. As he pondered this, Alex unleashed his telekinetic power to search everywhere. After almost half an hour of searching, Alex finally found Logan. He was sleeping in a wolf den. What the hell happened? Alex, bewildered, teleported outside the den. As soon as Alex appeared, Logan awoke, his adamantium claws extended, and he charged out with a fierce look, threatening, "Get out. I don't want to see you, Logan, you really don't remember me." Alex frowned, staring at Logan as he spoke, attempting to trigger his memory through telepathy. But to Alex's surprise, before the telepathy could even reach Logan's mind, Logan roared and charged, his momentum as fierce as a tiger. "Huh?" Alex exclaimed in surprise, dodging Logan's attack with a series of dodged movements, his gaze fixed on Logan's head, bewildered. Logan was incredibly powerful, even capable of escaping telepathic control under certain circumstances, but there was no way he could react before Alex's telepathy was activated. In fact, there were only a handful of people on Earth who could do this, and most of them possessed formidable psychic powers. Alex was distracted by his thoughts, while Logan focused solely on his attack. His steel claws swung relentlessly, occasionally sweeping across the surrounding trees. Even a man, the size of a man, couldn't withstand Wolverine's claws, breaking in two in a matter of moments. Alex sighed, watching the still ferocious Logan, and whispered, "I'm sorry, Logan." As soon as he finished speaking, Alex struck decisively, appearing behind Logan in a flash and striking him with a knife, knocking him unconscious. Just came out of the small dark room, 4 chapters in a row, everyone pay attention. Chapter 333, Special Class, Update 2. In Academy City, Stephen, after a fierce struggle, waited until darkness had fallen before mustering up the courage to walk towards Alex's residence, encouraging himself as he walked. Just then, Alex returned with the unconscious Logan. Alex had been eager to learn about Logan's recent experiences when he encountered Stephen. Hearing a knock on the door, Alex was startled, then even more stunned when he realized it was Stephen. It took him a moment to remember. "I almost forgot about that," Alex muttered, then shook his head with a wry smile. After carefully tending to the unconscious Logan, he opened the door and called Stephen, who was about to leave in disappointment, "In. Come in, I just ran something out. Am I disturbing you, Mr. Alex?" Stephen stood up hurriedly, his manner extremely respectful, even though Alex looked much younger than him. Alex noticed Stephen's awkwardness, smiled, shook his head, and said, "Nothing." Without further ado, Alex got straight to the point. "Stephen, do you know why I called you here tonight?" Stephen's heart trembled, a hint of excitement building, and even his words stuttered. "I don't know, Alex, sir. The Magic Academy has been open for over a year now. What do you think of it?" Alex chuckled and asked again. "Excellent," Stephen said without hesitation, his somewhat aged face brimming with pride. "Excellent, Stephen, I want to hear the truth." Alex was a little annoyed, somewhat disappointed by Stephen's performance. Stephen had been secretly observing Alex's expression. The change in Alex's expression immediately gave him a bad feeling, and he quickly straightened his tone and said honestly, "The Magic Academy is indeed excellent, but..." At this point, Stephen hesitated again, unsure whether to speak. "Go ahead, I don't mind." Encouraged by Alex, Stephen no longer hesitated and spoke without hesitation. "The magic knowledge taught at the Magic Academy is too basic. It's no longer suitable for some of us." Stephen wasn't exaggerating. The Magic Academy had been teaching the fundamentals of magic for the entire year, and it was extremely simple. Otherwise, Stephen wouldn't have caught up with all the magic apprentices in just 7 months, despite his immense talent. I know. I did it on purpose, Alex confessed. To Stephen's astonishment, he inquired again, Stephen, do you know why? Stephen suppressed the scream and roar of anger rising from his throat, his brow furrowed as he pondered Alex's motives. Could it be because of humans? Stephen, worthy of Alex's favor, possessed a considerable intelligence, and quickly discovered the key. Alex nodded, his expression becoming a little dazed. Mutants have existed in this world for a very long time. They were born with the birth of humans. Ignoring the shocked Stephen, Alex continued to himself, as the number of mutants continues to increase, the conflicts with humans are also increasing day by day. Although there are reasons of the mutants themselves, more of them are due to humans. Humans are afraid of the mutants' magical and powerful power, and afraid that mutants will replace them, so humans try every means to eliminate mutants. For countless years, such things have happened many times, and the casualties of both mutants and humans are very, very heavy. I have always hoped and firmly believed that mutants can live in peace with humans. Alex looked down at Stephen, the expression on his face sacred and great. I have worked hard for a long time, as you can see. The establishment of the Magic Academy is to allow humans to also master powerful power, so that humans do not have to be afraid of the abilities of mutants. Hearing this, Stephen finally couldn't help but asked, but, why do you? Humans are greedy, Stephen. Alex shook his head, his expression slightly sad. Alex never believed humans and mutants could coexist peacefully, at least not for the next 100 years. Mutants' innate abilities gave them advantages over humans in many areas, not just combat, and over time, mutants would gradually replace humans and dominate society. Ordinary people might not mind, but the upper classes would absolutely hate to see such a situation. And, precisely, the upper classes controlled the world. Stephen was shocked by this, and nodded bitterly without saying anything. For more than a year, I have been observing the humans in the Magic Academy. Alex did not continue this slightly heavy topic, and said with a faint smile, you are the only one who satisfies me, whether it is talent, personality, or attitude towards mutants. Stephen was excited when he heard this, but he also understood what Alex wanted to express. He nodded firmly and said, I will always stand by you, Mr. Alex. I don't need you to stand on that side. Alex shook his head with a slightly serious expression. Through the efforts of the past 2 years, ordinary humans have become less wary of mutants. I hope that you, and humans like you, can influence more humans, upper-class humans. Do you understand, Stephen? Stephen was a little overwhelmed and stunned for a long time before he came to his senses. What should I do, Mr. Alex? You don't need to do anything, just stick to your own beliefs. Alex shook his head again, and warned seriously and sincerely, this is the greatest help to mutants, no mistake. One song, one post, one content, one book, one forum. Like all species in the universe, humans worship the strong. Since ancient times, the leader of a clan has always been the strongest. Alex's mission is to cultivate strong individuals for humanity, allowing them to become leaders. Through their attitudes, he can shift humanity's attitude towards mutants. While today's society no longer values the powerful, a strong human still holds immense influence, both among ordinary humans and those of higher rank. Stephen is no fool, on the contrary, he's incredibly intelligent. He quickly grasps the situation, sighing with relief and saying, I know what to do, Mr. Alex. Alex's body relaxes, a cheerful smile spreading across his face. He nods and says, Stephen, I'm proud of your decision. After a moment of praise, Alex immediately adds, now, I'll teach you true magic. It will grant you divine power. Alex then begins to teach Stephen true magic, imparting all his knowledge. Stephen's magical talent is truly remarkable. In just 1 month, his skills have advanced dramatically. If you were to face Scott again, he'd likely defeat him in a single blow. Chapter 334 Weapon X, Update 1. After a night, Alex finally had time to check on Logan. When Alex saw him again, he was awake, but his hands and feet were bound, preventing him from moving. Seeing Alex's presence, Logan, who had been struggling, stopped immediately, turned to glare at Alex, and growled angrily, who are you? Let me go right now, Logan, Alex shouted, then realized Logan had lost his memory. Shaking his head, He slowly approached Logan and began to use telepathy. Logan was immediately aware of Alex's telepathy, but he couldn't resist. He could only lash out in fury. "Get out of my head, you piece of shit!" Alex frowned, somewhat surprised by Logan's strong mental defenses. It took some effort to finally reach Logan's consciousness. However, the moment Alex made contact with Logan's mind, he recoiled in fear. Logan's mind was incredibly violent, more terrifying than any other person Alex had ever seen, practically shattering Alex's psychic power. After a moment of stunned silence, Alex regained consciousness and turned to look at Logan. He saw his entire body flushed red, his muscles flexing and exploding. His eyes were bloodshot, their pupils devoid of any life, only a primal killing intent. "What the hell is going on?" Alex froze, staring at Logan in disbelief. With a roar, Logan shattered the iron shackles on his hands and feet, leaping over and lunging at Alex. Caught off guard, Alex was tackled, and Logan's steel claws instantly pierced his ribs, blood gushing from 6 holes. Alex, despite his incredible strength, could not endure the pain of the punctures. He wailed, then regained consciousness. In a rage, he channeled energy into his hands and smacked Logan away with a single blow. Alex's attack, filled with resentment, was so powerful that Logan was sent flying across the room, collapsing more than a dozen concrete walls before finally coming to a stop. The entire Academy City was aware of the commotion, and countless figures emerged from all directions. "Alex, what happened?" Seeing Alex flying out of the ruins, Vivian Lee hurried over. When she saw the blood on Alex's chest, she screamed, "Alex, what happened to you?" Alex had recovered from his injuries long ago, but the blood and tears on his clothes could not be hidden, and anyone with a discerning eye could see them at a glance. With this cry, everyone noticed that something was wrong with Alex. "I'm fine," Alex said coldly, and his figure was like lightning. He instantly appeared at Logan's position, firing at full force, not allowing Logan to fight back. In an instant, Logan was captured. "Is this Logan? What happened?" Vivian Lee looked at the Logan that Alex had brought over, and then looked at Alex, surprised. "Where's Charles?" Alex asked instead of answering. His eyes swept across the room, finally landing on Emma, who had just arrived. "Find him and have him come back immediately." Alex left with Logan deep in the mysterious valley. In the past 2 years, the leaders of the House of Mutants have divided up the work. Emma stayed in Academy City because she loved being a teacher, and she even indulged in her teaching habit on weekdays. Charles was in charge of the X-Men and led them away from home all year round. Sage was in New York, responsible for recruiting mutants from all over the world and managing those who were away. "Can anyone tell me what happened?" Emma was very annoyed. She had just arrived and had no idea what was going on. "Alex. Why did he fight with Logan?" Vivian Lee shook her head helplessly, her face also full of confusion. "Notify Charles," Emma cursed, then immediately chased in the direction Alex had disappeared. After a few steps, she seemed to remember something and paused to add, "and call Nick Fury and Natasha." In a matter of moments, Charles, Nick Fury, and Natasha arrived at the Uncanny Valley. They were met by a sullen Alex, a bewildered Emma, and an unconscious Logan. Charles's gaze darted between Alex and the other two, and after a moment's hesitation, he asked, "What's wrong?" Alex remained silent, casting his telepathic gaze on Logan. As expected, Logan went berserk once more. Fortunately, Alex was prepared, knocking him unconscious the moment he was about to attack. The entire process lasted only 10 seconds, leaving Charles and the other two stunned. "I've tried many times. Whenever I try to probe Logan's mind, he does this." Alex's face was bitter, a hint of fatigue on his face, but he couldn't hide the rage deep within. Charles and the other two had already briefly understood what had happened before arriving. Knowing what Alex intended, they all fell silent. "Is there any other way to restore Logan's memory?" Natasha asked slowly after a long pause. "No," Charles shook his head firmly. "At least not at this point, with Earth's technological level." At that moment, Alex suddenly raised his head, his eyes red and gleaming with a terrifying murderous glint. "We'll talk about Logan's memories later. Right now, I just want to know what happened to him." Feeling Alex's gaze, Charles and the other two shuddered, feeling as if they were being stared at by the god of death. "I'm already tracking him, Alex," Nick Fury said, taking a deep breath. "Trust me, we'll have news soon. There are many who can and dare to touch Logan, but not many who would." Alex turned to look at Nick Fury, his eyes sharp as a knife. One of his former brothers had died, 2 were missing, and if Logan were to disappear again, Alex would be furious. Nick Fury's face flushed with embarrassment. He looked deeply at Alex, nodded, and said, "I'll focus on investigating the humans." SHIELD was truly the world's most powerful intelligence organization. News arrived in just 2 days. As Alex had expected, it was indeed connected to humans, and the implications were far-reaching. Humans, what on earth do they want? Alex laughed angrily at the information Nick Fury handed him. Nick Fury sat beside Alex, speechless, his heart filled with resentment towards the humans. This time, the humans had truly gotten away with it. After laughing, Alex continued to flip through the documents. His face turned greener and greener as he read. In the end, he couldn't help but tremble all over, and his eyes were full of murderous intent. Weapon X. Humans, are you declaring war? Chapter 335 Lessons, Part 2. Alex, calm down. Nick Fury, unable to sit still after hearing Alex's words, quickly stood up and soothed him. This is just the behavior of a small number of humans. It has nothing to do with the rest of humanity. You mean it has nothing to do with me? Alex abruptly stood up and slammed the 3-inch thick document onto the table, revealing a photo of a mutant lying on a bed, his chest cut open, a gruesome death. Meanwhile, Carter sighed and offered his words of advice. Alex, I understand your anger, but, this time, Nick Fury had brought Natasha and Carter with him, hoping they could calm Alex down. Okay, I'll give you one chance, Alex interrupted Carter before she could finish. His tone was fierce. He turned to Nick Fury and said coldly, Nick, inform the human higher-ups to immediately hand over all those involved. I'll forgive them. Remember, everyone involved in this Weapon X project. Nick Fury and the other two exchanged a glance and breathed a sigh of relief. Alex's concession was the biggest he could offer. Wait for my news. Patting Alex on the shoulder, Nick Fury didn't stay long, and immediately returned with Natasha and Carter. That evening, Nick Fury returned to Academy City. What do the humans say? Alex looked at Nick Fury expressionlessly, already knowing what was going on. The humans won't hand over the people. Nick Fury looked up at Alex and said, Alex, the Weapon X program is incredibly massive. At this point, Nick Fury swallowed, then smiled wryly and continued, it involves over half the world's nations, including the President of the United States. Alex was stunned. He hadn't imagined the so-called Weapon X program would be so vast. This made it impossible to completely kill them all. But Alex couldn't bring himself to give up. The images of the mutants who had died in such a tragic way kept flashing through his mind. After a long silence, Alex slumped onto the sofa, staring up at the ceiling. He said, somewhat baffled, Nick, you could have kept it a secret. At that moment, Alex suddenly had this thought, what if Nick Fury kept some of these people secret, and he didn't even know? How great would that be? I'm afraid we can't be brothers. Nick Fury shook his head, his expression solemn. I can hide this from you for a while, but not forever. So, I'm telling you the truth, even though it's embarrassing for both you and me. Alex fell silent again, and the room fell into long, dead silence. As the sun began to set, Alex sighed dejectedly and slowly straightened up. Okay, I can spare the lives of those at the president's level, but they must resign. As he spoke, Alex suddenly shuddered, a murderous aura emanating from him. As for the rest, leave no one alive, I'll pass it on. Alex, Nick Fury stood up and quickly walked out. After Nick Fury left, Emma entered with Vivian Lee and the other two girls, all listening to the conversation between Alex and Nick Fury. Why would the humans do this? Audrey, though human, could not understand why they would persecute mutants in this way. Monroe sat beside Alex, her arms clasped around his arm. She pouted in exasperation, cursing, humans are just jealous and envious. We didn't provoke them. After spending so much time with Alex, Monroe had come to consider herself a mutant. Emma glanced at Monroe with a mixture of amusement and tears, then turned back to Alex and asked gravely, really? Are we really going to go that far? Emma was equally furious at what the humans had done, but if they went to war all over, all their efforts over the past few years would be undone. Emma felt it was somewhat unfair, considering many of the mutants killed were of bad character. I've given them a chance, Alex, their empathy shared, knowing what she was thinking. He shook his head and said gravely, this is also a lesson for the humans, a lesson for them to understand that we're not just doves, but eagles too. Unknowingly, another day had passed, and Nick Fury had returned to Academy City. What do the humans say? Alex asked bluntly. Nick Fury's face turned bitter. He wiped the non-existent beads of sweat from his forehead and shook his head. You can handle the others, but they're forcing me. Alex's face turned cold and he shouted. With these words, the temperature in the room seemed to drop significantly. Don't worry, wait until I'm done. Nick Fury's heart grew increasingly bitter, and he hated this job immensely. The governments haven't explicitly refused, it just needs to be discussed. How long? 7 days, 3 days, okay, Nick Fury agreed without hesitation, not wanting to bargain. Alex was a bit stunned by Nick Fury's behavior. It took him a long moment to react. A smile finally broke across his face, which hadn't smiled in days. If I had known this would happen, I would have said it all day. No chance, Nick Fury chuckled, and without stopping, he hurried back. Before leaving, he added, Alex, I'm on your side. Thank you, Nick. Alex looked at Nick Fury with gratitude. It was truly rare for a human like him, one who presided over humanity's most powerful intelligence organization, to have such support from Nick Fury. Nick Fury said nothing, but waved his hand and quickly left Academy City. Time was strange, sometimes feeling incredibly short, sometimes incredibly long. For 3 days, every second felt like a long, torturous, agonizing experience for Alex. Finally, when the final day arrived, humanity's choice would be decided at the final meeting. Alex, what will they choose? Emma leaned into Alex's arms, a slightly downcast expression on her face. Alex wasn't the only one who felt the pain of a year. Many leaders of the mutant community, including Emma, felt the same way. No one liked war. Alex shook his head, then turned to gaze at the vast Academy City. His eyes were as deep as the ocean, and he sighed, I hope humanity can make the right choice. Academy City was still bustling with activity. The struggle between mutants and humans was limited to the upper echelons, unknown to the common people. They continued to live a peaceful and happy life. But this life could vanish in a single day. As Alex, Emma, and the others anxiously awaited the outcome of the human struggle, Charles, who had stayed in New York, suddenly received a telepathic message. The long-missing Magneto had suddenly appeared, right in New York. Eric, Alex was dazed, seemingly still unresponsive. Charles, unaware of Alex's unusual behavior, continued, he's accompanied by quite a few people, including a woman whose abilities even the Sage couldn't detect. Besides their computer-like brains and telepathic abilities, the Sage possessed the ability to sense mutant traits. Alex slowly came back to his senses, but a figure suddenly popped up in his mind, and his face changed drastically. Is she wearing gloves on her hands? Charles was stunned for a long time. As if to confirm, and replied after a moment, yes, the 2 added chapters plus today's 2 chapters are all delivered here. Chapter 336 Magneto's Conspiracy. Without a word, Alex abandoned everyone around him and teleported directly to Charles. Seeing Alex suddenly appear before him, Charles was puzzled. What's wrong, Alex? Gather the men. Stop Magneto immediately. Alex gave a series of orders without time to explain, then turned and asked, do you know where Magneto is now? Although Charles didn't know the deeper meaning of Alex's order, he immediately carried it out. While summoning the X-Men, he turned to look at Alex with an awkward expression on his face. Magneto has teleporters around him, and we can't locate him. Alex frowned, his mind recalling the scene from the movie. His expression changed, and he asked in panic, where's the summit meeting being held today? In the movie, Magneto took advantage of the gathering of heads of state to activate the special transformation device, which seemed to be on a small island with a vaguely visible giant statue. Could it be the Statue of Liberty? It had been so long, Alex's memory was fuzzy, and he couldn't pinpoint the location of the island from the movie. Alex's mumbling reached Charles' ears. Charles paused, then tentatively said, Magneto has indeed appeared near the Statue of Liberty, quite a few times. Then I'll go first, you guys follow, Alex said, eagerly rushing towards the Statue of Liberty. He activated teleportation, and moments later, Alex emerged from the void. To Alex's surprise, he wasn't near the Statue of Liberty, but rather downtown Manhattan, a considerable distance from the statue. Alex gazed at the Statue of Liberty from afar in the darkness, his expression not surprised but delighted. The teleportation had gone wrong, so Magneto must be there. Even with this thought in mind, Alex's steps didn't slow. He soared into the air, a pair of wings made of pure energy appearing behind him. With a slight flap, Alex flew like a gust of wind, swiftly heading towards the Statue of Liberty. In a matter of moments, Alex had reached the other side of Liberty Island, where the Statue of Liberty stood. A bustle of activity surrounded him, flashbulbs flashing constantly. From the clamor, Alex knew the summit was being held nearby. "Looks like it's true," Alex snorted, relaying the message to Charles before flapping his wings again and swiftly soaring towards Liberty Island. On Liberty Island, within the Statue of Liberty, Magneto chained a young girl to a device and was about to activate it when Mystique suddenly approached. "Eric, someone's coming." It must be the X-Men. Alex hadn't tried to hide his whereabouts, and he was immediately spotted. However, due to the distance, Magneto and his companions didn't realize it was Alex. "Stop him," Magneto scolded, then ignored them, his entire attention focused on the girl before him, his face burning. The girl trembled with fear, cowering in fear as she asked, "What exactly do you want?" "I want mutants to take over the world," Magneto laughed maniacally, his laughter brimming with pride. "Isn't it good now?" Because of her powers, the girl had suffered greatly, afraid to interact with others. But over the past 2 years, while she still feared human contact, she could clearly sense the kindness humans showed toward mutants. Magneto's face suddenly turned cold at this, his eyes gleaming with a fierce gleam. "Alex, you coward. Mutants and humans can never coexist. Why? Aren't we all fine now?" At the mention of Alex's name, the girl's eyes lit up. The fear of the unknown vanishing. She looked up at Magneto with confusion. Seeing his plan on the verge of success, Magneto remained calm and chatted leisurely with the girl. Of course, most of the time, Magneto was arguing and cursing. "Humans," Magneto sneered, his face filled with anger as he roared, "do you know? Humans have been experimenting on mutants. To date, at least thousands have died in their labs." The girl was stunned by this, staring blankly at the slightly frantic Magneto, a mixture of suspicion and a hint of fear. Alex is a hypocrite. He knows it all. He knows humans are killing their own people, but he does nothing. He even secretly helps them. As he spoke, Magneto began to curse Alex again, revealing the depth of his hatred for him. Every imaginable word Magneto could accuse him of was used. He's a villain, a coward, an accomplice, an executioner. The girl was completely stunned, her head about to explode, unsure who to trust. After venting his anger, Magneto suddenly fell silent again, his expression returning to a cold, stern expression. He roughly yanked off the girl's glove and reached out to grab her hand. At that moment, a voice rang out, "Eric, stop!" Alex emerged from the shadows, a gloomy expression on his face. In reality, Alex had already arrived. He ignored Mystique and the others who tried to stop him and went straight inside the Statue of Liberty. He had been preparing to immediately seize Magneto, but upon hearing Magneto's curses, Alex paused. He took in every word of Magneto's words, especially the last part, "Unrelated text follows, unrelated text follows." "Alex!" Magneto's entire body trembled at the sound, and he turned to look at Alex in disbelief. "Why are you here?" Alex glanced at the girl strapped to the machine and smiled. Then, looking at Magneto, he said sincerely, "Eric, stop, stop." Magneto laughed wildly, his face full of sarcasm. "Do you want to be like you, watching your own people being slaughtered by humans?" Alex was speechless, but his heart was filled with bitterness. Alex also wanted to take revenge and deal a drastic blow to humanity, but Alex was responsible for the future of mutants. Going to war with humans now was unwise. It would only end in mutual destruction and the ultimate destruction of mutants, just like the apocalypse in the movies. "Eric, you're only making humans hate mutants even more." Alex, unable to argue, turned to persuasion. Eric laughed again, his face brimming with pride. "Once I've transformed them all into mutants, they won't hate me anymore." It had to be said that Eric's idea was brilliant, similar in concept to Alex's. However, Eric's plan was much more convenient and quicker. If he could pull it off, it would truly be a permanent solution. The key problem, however, was that Eric's machine wasn't perfect. The transformed council member in the movie ultimately turned into a puddle of water, a death beyond compare. Chapter 337 Ending. "Eric, are you sure your machine will work?" Alex shuddered, recalling the final death of the government official in the movie. He shook his head and said solemnly, "You should know that mutants' powers come from the X gene. Your machine might succeed in giving humans superpowers, but it won't last." Alex refused to give up on Eric and desperately tried to pull him back to his side. "No way, my machine will work." Eric refused to listen. He shouted, reaching out to grab the girl's arms and activating the machine. Alex was prepared. As soon as he moved, Alex appeared in the machine, raised his hands to remove the handcuffs from the girl's hands, and with a light palm, he sent her out. Seeing the girl being ejected from the machine, Eric flew into a rage, and the immense magnetic force quickly squeezed Alex in. Eric's rage was terrifying, and Alex was caught off guard and stumbled. Alex instinctively reached for something nearby, only to bump into the energy-absorbing sphere. Knowing something was amiss, Alex strained his right hand to free it, but his palm seemed glued to the sphere, unable to escape. Adding to Alex's panic, the energy within him rapidly drained away, and the entire machine spun faster and faster. In an instant, it transformed into a massive, glowing sphere, illuminating the surrounding dark sky with a shimmering silver light. As the sphere expanded, the torch at its base gradually merged into it. Outside the sphere, Eric watched the scene with a wild laugh. He'd thought the plan had failed with the girl's escape, but Alex hadn't expected to collide with it. What a surprise. And with Alex's abilities, the final mutation would likely be even more pronounced. The sphere atop the Statue of Liberty attracted the attention of many. Charles and the others, unmindful of their current opponents, rushed towards it. They spotted Magneto floating safely nearby, but there was no sign of Alex. "Eric, where's Alex?" Charles glanced around but couldn't see Alex. He turned to Magneto and demanded sharply. Magneto chuckled, then air-stepped to the top of the goddess statue. He pointed at the orb of light that had engulfed the entire torch. "Look, it's inside." "What?" Charles' heart trembled, and he stared blankly at the orb, unsure what to do. Magneto smiled at Charles and the others, saying calmly, "You can't stop it." Magneto could sense the energy in the machine reaching its limit. A faint silver light began to emanate in all directions, and his plan was finally coming to fruition. Everyone present was a mutant, and they could all sense the vast and strange energy within the orb, the speed of its flow beyond imagination. As Magneto had said, interrupting the orb would be extremely difficult. "Let me try." An angel emerged from the crowd, its metal wings transformed by Apocalypse flapping violently. The angel transformed into a streak of golden light and slammed into the orb. With a resounding bang, the angel's body flew backward, blood gushing from his mouth. The massive energy shockwave from the collision knocked everyone around him reeling, even Magneto unable to steady himself. Despite the angel's dismay, the ball of light paused for a moment before rapidly spinning again. Its speed did slow slightly, but it quickly picked up again. Inside the ball of light, Alex was in a state of panic. The more he struggled, the faster the energy within him drained away. The surging energy connected Alex to the machine, forming a single entity. Even if Alex tried to sever his arm, the surging energy would instantly reconnect the energy channel, even without his arm. Finally, the ball of light began to transform, and a silver energy slowly emanated from it. Charles, dragged there by Alex, was unaware of the entire situation and, naturally, the purpose of the silver energy. Fortunately, among the crowd was a perceptive sage. As the silver energy swept over his body, Sage's expression suddenly changed. He pointed at the ball of light and screamed, "Quick, stop it!" Without any explanation, the X-Men attacked without hesitation. Eric, Mystique appeared at Magneto's side, glancing at the X-Men with concern. "Should we attack?" Magneto smiled and waved his hand, saying with a relaxed expression, "Let them hit. The harder the better." Meanwhile, Charles and the others noticed something was amiss. Their attacks had no effect on the ball of light and were actually increasing its power. "What do we do now?" Alex paused immediately after noticing his attack being absorbed by the ball of light. His expression darkened as he watched the silver energy threatening to spread to Manhattan. Charles's attacks were barely effective, and his signature telepathy was unable to penetrate the chaotic field surrounding the ball of light, let alone reach Alex. After a moment's silence, Charles shook his head helplessly. "Now, it's all up to Alex." Within the ball of light, Alex tried many methods to slow the loss of energy, but with little success. Energy devouring only slowed it down a fraction. Should I really do this? Feeling the energy draining from his body accelerate, Alex had to consider his last resort. Transforming into a black hole, an advanced ability of energy devouring, was far more effective than consuming energy. In the current situation, this was probably the only way to stop it. However, transforming into a black hole would unleash the mutated energy of the Terrigen Mist suppressed within Alex. The first time Alex was able to suppress the mutated energy of the Terrigen Mist, it was pure luck. Without Black Bolt's crucial roar, Alex would never have succeeded. He had no confidence in trying again. Hopefully, This time it won't take too long." With a heartfelt prayer, Alex's body disintegrated bit by bit, instantly transforming into a fist-sized black hole. As the black hole took shape, the rotation of the ball of light suddenly stalled, then rapidly reversed. The scattered silver energy seemed to be drawn back toward the ball of light. In an instant, the silver energy that enveloped the entire Liberty Island vanished, leaving only a ball of light on the Statue of Liberty's raised right hand. As time passed, the ball of light grew dimmer. Finally, when the ball of light completely vanished, Alex reappeared. The moment the ball of light vanished, Alex released his black hole form and returned to his human form. Without saying anything more, Alex left a message for Charles and teleported back to the Academy City. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 338 3 months. Alex, you're back. Emma's face was filled with surprise at Alex's sudden appearance. She had already learned Alex's goal from Charles, so she wasn't particularly worried. Alex didn't have time to explain. He teleported Emma, gathering Vivian and the other two girls together several times before finally saying, "Due to an accident, the mutated energy of the Terrigen mist within me can no longer be suppressed." What? Emma and the other girls suddenly stood up, looking at Alex in panic. Alex lowered his head in shame, mumbling something, but when he opened his mouth, he didn't know what to say, and stood there in a daze. Emma and the other girls snapped back to their senses, leaning forward to surround Alex, either snuggling or hugging him. Their eyes flushed slightly, but they remained resolute, saying, "Alex, we'll wait for you forever, I swear, this time it won't take too long." Alex stretched out his arms, hugging the four girls in his arms, and explained earnestly, "I can feel it. Trust me, it won't be long." As Alex finished speaking, a thick purple mist suddenly emerged from his body. Alex had been suppressing the mutant energy within him and hadn't anticipated this, taking no precautions. Watching the purple mist envelop the four girls, Alex tried to react, only to find his body encased in crystals condensed from the mist, unable to move. He quickly lost consciousness, leaving only a look of deep terror on his face. The Terrigen mist, while a magical power for inhumans, transforms superpowers, is a deadly poison to those who aren't. After an unknown amount of time, Alex gradually regained consciousness. He screamed and sat up, his mind immediately replaying the scene before he fell asleep. The mist of Terrigen enveloped Emma and the other two girls. Emma. Vivian Lee. Audrey. Monroe. Alex murmured the four girls' names, his face filled with sorrow and grief. Endless regret washed over him, nearly tearing his heart to shreds. At that moment, Audrey's fresh, elegant voice rang out in Alex's ears, filled with surprise. "Alex, you're awake. Is it hallucination?" Alex muttered, but he subconsciously raised his head. Once he saw the figure in front of him clearly, he blurted out, "Audrey, you're not dead." "Dead?" Audrey frowned at Alex, stepped forward and sat down beside the bed. She patted Alex's chest and complained, "Alex, you just woke up and you're talking nonsense." Alex, believing he was dreaming, raised his hand and slapped himself. Bright red fingerprints immediately appeared, and the piercing pain told Alex that this was not a dream. "Audrey, you're really okay." Alex jumped up with joy, hugging the bewildered Audrey tightly, tears streaming down his face. The moment he saw Terrigen's magical mist envelop the women, Alex truly believed he was losing them. Audrey was held in Alex's arms. Though surprised, she habitually wrapped her arms around Alex's waist and abdomen, resting her head on Alex's shoulder. She whispered, "Alex, you're finally awake." She couldn't help but smile sweetly again, looking up at Alex with wide eyes. "Only 3 months. How wonderful, 3 months." Alex was slightly startled, then smiled. Compared to the long 10 years, 3 short months truly filled Alex with joy. Today, it's been a full 100 days. Looking down at Audrey's clear eyes, Alex couldn't help but clench his fists, saying with gratitude, "Thank God I didn't lose you." Just then, Emma and the other girls, having received the news, rushed over. Seeing Alex awake, they all burst into tears of joy. After a busy period of comforting the 4 girls, Alex took the opportunity to ask the question that concerned him the most in order to divert their attention. "Terrigen's magic mist clearly covered you, how come you are okay?" Hearing Alex's question, Monroe, Vivian Lee and Audrey looked at each other, then looked at Emma beside them, with a smile in the corner of their eyes, and asked instead of answering, "Alex, guess." "How can I guess?" Alex was a little amused and looked at Monroe with a ridiculous face, like a little fox who had stolen a chicken. Monroe became interested and moved closer to Alex, grabbing Alex's arm and shaking it, urging him continuously, "It's very easy, think about it carefully." Then he turned his head to look at Audrey, then turned his head back and emphasized seriously, "It's really easy." Alex glanced at the four girls in front of him, frowned slightly, but he had no clue. Monroe's shaking made his head swell, and Alex finally threw out an answer, "Could it be that you're all Inhumans?" "Bingo, correct." Monroe snapped her fingers, grinning at Alex, as if trying to read something from his face. Unfortunately, Alex's face was expressionless, not even an expression. Alex was stunned by this news. No, Emma can't be an Inhuman. Alex's mind raced, and Emma suddenly came to mind. He turned to look at her. Emma shrugged, a faint smile on her lips, and said slowly, "I used my diamond body to dodge." Alex paused for a moment, then glanced at Vivian Lee, seeing her nod. Then he looked at Audrey, her gentle eyes confirming the truth. Finally, he settled on Monroe, a broad smile spreading across her unmade-up face. No mistake, one song, one post, one content, one book, one forum. After slowly digesting this somewhat unbelievable news, Alex glanced at Vivian and the other two girls again, asking with concern, "How long did it take for you to mutate? Are there any unusual symptoms?" "We all did pretty quickly, about a day," Audrey replied calmly, but was interrupted mid-sentence by Monroe beside her. Monroe suddenly grabbed Audrey, and her skin suddenly began to flow. In an instant, Monroe transformed into another Audrey, her appearance, figure, even her eyes and expression identical, as if she were a clone. "Alex, how is it?" Looking at the stunned Alex, Monroe's Audrey smirked, her voice indistinguishable from Audrey's. If it weren't for the uncharacteristically sexy allure Monroe had just displayed, Alex wouldn't have been able to tell the difference between the two. Alex was stunned. The first thing he thought of was Mystique's ability. Is this Mystique's transformation? Mine is much more advanced than hers. She can only transform into human, but I can transform into other things. As he spoke, Monroe's entire body began to flow, and finally turned into a cat. Although this cat was a bit of a reminder. Chapter 339 The Abilities of the Three Women. Alex stared at the giant cat in front of him, his mouth agape. He couldn't help but reach out and stroke its soft golden fur, his face filled with disbelief. "Monroe, is this really you?" "Of course it's me," the cat replied, then instantly transformed back into Monroe's form, complaining glumly, "It's just that this ability is a bit tricky to use, and it consumes a lot of energy, especially when transforming into a non-human creature." Alex patted Monroe's shoulder and said soothingly with a smile, "You don't have the ability to become a god overnight, you'll have to practice slowly." As he spoke, Alex turned to look at Vivian and Audrey with anticipation, wondering what surprises they would bring him. Noticing Alex's gaze, Audrey chuckled softly and slowly raised her right hand, palm facing the glass on the coffee table. Could it be mind control? Seeing Audrey's movements, Alex immediately thought of this ability. Audrey smiled and shook her head. Suddenly, with a low cry, the glass on the coffee table, as Alex watched, suddenly exploded into a shower of shards. Alex faintly sensed a strange vibrational energy and turned to Audrey, tentatively asking, "Resonance?" After being transformed by Tarragon's divine mist, my body can sense the vibrations of all things, Audrey said, slowly raising her hand. Water from another glass on the coffee table floated out, defying common sense, transforming into various shapes under her control. "I achieve this by creating and controlling vibration waves." Audrey suddenly turned to Alex and smiled calmly, "Of course, I can also destroy them." As Audrey finished her last words, the water ball in the air suddenly exploded, then instantly turned into a cloud of mist, dissipating in an instant. "Amazing," Alex couldn't help but exclaim in amazement, his face unable to conceal his joy. Seeing Alex so excited, Audrey was naturally delighted, but Monroe and Vivian Lee were a little frustrated, as neither of their abilities had obvious combat potential. Alex didn't notice the change in their expressions, and kept holding Audrey's hand to ask about her abilities. Audrey's ability immediately reminded Alex of Black Bolt's sonic waves. They shared similarities. However, Audrey's vibration waves were clearly more subtle. Theoretically, everything in the world has its own inherent frequency. Reaching a specific frequency can resonate with it, easily destroying anything, no matter how heavily protected. This is because vibration waves can bypass that protection and impact the target. Imagine a perfectly healthy person's heart suddenly being crushed. That's the effect. Of course, achieving this isn't easy. Given Audrey's peaceful and calm nature, achieving this level of invisible killing would take decades. Fortunately, Alex wasn't counting on Audrey's assistance in battle. He was more interested in replicating her abilities. Seeing Alex and Audrey chatting away, Emma looked at Vivian and Marilyn, who were sulking, with a mixture of laughter and tears. She coughed softly, a subtle reminder for Alex. Alex, don't forget Vivian and Marilyn. Alex was startled by Emma's telepathic transmission, and immediately snapped back to his senses. He looked at Vivian with an awkward expression, then smiled awkwardly and said, "Excuse me, Vivian, He hesitated for a moment, unsure what to say. He simply changed the subject and asked, "Vivian, what new abilities have you gained?" Vivian, already dejected, was further hurt by Alex's reaction. Fighting back tears, she replied stiffly, "It's a useless ability, let's not talk about it." Alex, no idiot after all, reacted immediately and looked at Emma and the other two bewilderedly, unsure what to do. In his previous life, Alex was just an ignored homebody. After gaining his telepathic powers, he'd just been out having fun, with little experience with women. In this life, although he had 4 women by his side, Alex didn't spend much time with them, and romance between them was practically non-existent. Monroe snorted loudly, expressing her displeasure. Then, with a haughty expression, she turned her head away, ignoring Alex's plea for help. Emma and Audrey exchanged a glance, wryly smiling and shaking their heads, expressing their helplessness. "I was wrong," Alex apologized sincerely, but all Vivian did in return was burst into tears. Alex was completely panicked, and Emma and the others were at a loss as to what to do. Alex held Vivian tightly in his arms, apologizing and comforting her, but to little avail. Vivian's sobs grew more rapid and mournful, a cacophony of emotions. Seeing his methods ineffective, Alex turned to Emma and the other two again, but to his astonishment, they too had burst into tears, their tears sore and heartbreaking. Seeing the 4 women weeping uncontrollably, Alex truly didn't know what to do. Even if he wanted to offer some comfort, he didn't know which one to address. After an unknown amount of time, Vivian's sobs gradually subsided, and Emma and the other 2 girls' tears finally stopped as well. Alex, his face filled with guilt, was about to apologize, but Vivian broke free from Alex's embrace, looked up at Emma and the other 2, and said awkwardly, "I'm sorry, I lost control. It's good to cry. It's a good way to vent those pent-up emotions." Emma smiled faintly, casually wiping away the tears from her eyes, a look of relief on her face. Audrey and Monroe immediately chimed in, "Indeed, crying makes me feel better." "I feel so much better." Alex, bewildered, watched the 4 girls as if they were watching a pantomime, completely oblivious to what they were saying. "Alex, my ability is emotional feedback, just like what happened just now." Vivian smiled brightly and said with an open-minded face, "I can't do anything. It's really useless." Alex stood up suddenly, his eyes widened, and exclaimed in disbelief, "You can control other people's emotions." No. Vivian hurriedly shook her head and explained, "It's just emotional feedback. When I have strange emotions, it will affect the people nearby and make them have the same emotions as me." "Vivian, your ability is definitely more than that." Alex stood up, waved his hands and said with certainty, "You just haven't mastered it now. I can be sure that your ability will eventually reach the ability to control anyone's emotions, and even directly control people." Alex became more and more excited as he spoke, and couldn't help dancing. Vivian looked at Alex in surprise, as if she couldn't believe it. "Is it really possible?" "Alex, believe me, it's absolutely possible." After giving Vivian an affirmative answer, Alex turned his head to look at the somewhat depressed Monroe and shouted, "Monroe, your ability is not simple." Chapter 340. All the previous efforts were wasted. What? Monroe, secretly frustrated by her own abilities, suddenly leaped from the sofa upon hearing this and flung herself into Alex's arms, staring at him with sparkling eyes. Alex wrapped his arms around Monroe's waist and explained with a smile, "Yes, of the 3 of you, your abilities have the greatest potential." "Really?" Monroe felt as if she were wrapped in cotton candy, her heart filled with sweetness. It wasn't Alex's words, but his attitude. "You know Mystique's abilities, right?" Alex picked her up, straightened her body, and smiled at Emma and the other 2. "Mystique doesn't just transform, Through transformation, she also acquires some of the abilities of the person she transforms into. To avoid the four girls' misunderstanding, Alex quickly added, "Of course, that's limited to physical abilities." This wasn't a lie. In the movies, Mystique had transformed into Wolverine, even with those adamantium claws. "So, can I?" Monroe turned to look at Alex behind her, her tear-stained face filled with surprise. "Theoretically, it's possible." Alex clenched his hands, his expression growing serious. "It's like you've just turned into a cat. This isn't an illusion, this is real transformation. Naturally, you'll possess some of a cat's abilities. It's a gift, an instinct." Monroe looked confused, seemingly not understanding what Alex meant. "If you can flexibly control and master your transformation, you'll have the speed of a cheetah when running, the strength of a lion when attacking, and the flight of an eagle." As Alex spoke, Monroe's eyes brightened, and her body twisted in Alex's arms, as if she wanted to test her abilities again. "Be good, try them later." Alex hugged Monroe again and persuaded her. "Now, tell me, what's happened these past 3 months?" In fact, Alex had been wanting to ask this question since waking up and seeing Emma and the other 3 girls. He hadn't expected to ask it until now. Hearing Alex's question, the 4 girls' expressions all darkened, and Emma even lowered her head with a look of guilt. "I'm sorry, Alex." "Don't say sorry to me." Alex frowned slightly, then immediately relaxed, smiling and said, "Just say whatever you want to say, don't worry about anything. Humans unilaterally broke the contract and regarded us as a threat again." Emma looked up at Alex, angry and ashamed. "Our efforts of more than 2 years have almost been ruined." Alex's face finally changed after hearing this. "What exactly happened?" "Humans took advantage of the Magneto incident to attack us. Not only did they silently erase the X-weapon plan, they also came up with a Mutant Registration Act to strengthen management of us mutants." Emma became more and more excited as she spoke, and finally she couldn't help but stood up, waving her arms continuously, as if she regarded the air in front of her as the representative of humans. Alex's face turned completely pale, a raging rage boiling within him. He cursed through gritted teeth. "What, a Mutant Registration Act? How dare humans think of such a thing?" The Mutant Registration Act, to put it bluntly, meant keeping mutants in captivity, exposing all their information to humanity. If humans ever wanted to deal with mutants, wouldn't they have no chance of resistance? Mutants were powerful, but not invincible. If humans truly wanted to deal with them, they simply needed to find a way to counter them and capture them instantly. Otherwise, where did all the mutants who fell into the Weapon X program come from? After venting his anger, Alex narrowed his eyes slightly and asked expressionlessly, "What else have humans done? The Mutant Registration Act alone wouldn't have left the House of Mutants helpless." Alex's 2 years of work hadn't been in vain. X-Films has been shut down, and humans are still spreading the mutant threat theory around the world. Before Emma could say anything, Monroe twisted in Alex's arms, impatiently scolding him. "Those humans are so shameless. We didn't do anything, yet they're blaming us. Now, the whole world is talking about them." Hearing this, Alex's face was filled with bitterness, and he secretly regretted it. It seemed that he had pushed too hard on the Weapon X project, otherwise the humans wouldn't have retaliated so harshly. It used to be just a small group of anti-mutant people vilifying mutants, but now it has become a global campaign against mutants by over 100 countries. Mutants are being vilified. "Not everyone, at least some humans support us," Audrey added, her smile tinged with bitterness. Alex knew without hesitation that those who sided with the mutants at this moment were undoubtedly ordinary humans, and would have no impact on the human world as a whole. 2 years of hard work had gone down the drain. Alex, feeling depressed, had to start thinking about his future plans. He casually asked, "What about Magneto? How is he now?" After Magneto was captured, Charles handed him over to the U.S. government as a gesture of good faith. Emma sighed, her expression growing even more dejected. "Even Mystique and the other members of the Brotherhood of Mutants, there's still no news?" Alex was stunned by this, sighed, and then asked an irrelevant question. "The Hellfire Club, how are they now?" After the dramatic change in the status of mutants, the Hellfire Club had made significant moves, even more turbulent than Alex himself, with some mutants even becoming government representatives. "Total retreat," Emma snorted with disdain. After asking a series of random questions, Alex suddenly remembered something and turned to look out a window. The familiar, mysterious valley appeared before his eyes. The once bustling academy now seemed a bit deserted. 90% of the students at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry have left, Vivian Lee sighed softly, her voice slightly dejected at Alex's glance. Due to personal reasons, the 3 Vivian Lee women could no longer appear on screen, and the 3 women from X-Film hadn't intervened. They had finally found their place at the Academy, and now they didn't want to be idlers. Let them go. Alex waved his hand nonchalantly, saying, magic isn't just for humans. From now on, all mutants can learn magic. When the Academy first opened, Alex had considered allowing mutants to learn magic, but ultimately decided against it. On the one hand, he worried that mutants would be distracted, losing their magic skills and their own abilities, which would be a waste of time. On the other hand, he worried that studying with humans and mutants would cause unnecessary trouble. Now that the humans were no longer a concern, the other issue could be more strictly controlled, so it wasn't a big deal. 2 consecutive updates, please pay attention. Chapter 341 Alex's counterattack. Not all humans left. That Steven stayed. Seeing Alex's annoyed face, Monroe couldn't help but offer a soothing reassurance. Alex chuckled softly, a look of approval on his face. Wow, he's lived up to my expectations. Of the many human students at the Magic Academy, Alex only valued Stephen Strange. Never mind, there aren't many left anyway, Alex thought for a moment, then spoke again, a hint of resignation. Just merge the Magic Academy into X Academy. Save resources, Emma nodded, agreeing. The Magic Academy really doesn't need to exist anymore. As she spoke, Emma glanced sideways at Alex and asked hesitantly, Alex, should we teach the humans a lesson? While Magneto was largely to blame for the situation, humans also shared some responsibility, and the Weapon X program couldn't be ignored. Alex fell silent upon hearing this, regaining his composure for a long moment. His expression was grim. Send men immediately to destroy the Weapon X research base? After a pause, Alex added, his face grim. This is a warning to humanity. What about Magneto? Emma nodded, then asked worriedly. I'm worried the humans will kill them. Emma knew Alex's feelings for Magneto, and no matter what, Alex wouldn't let him die at the hands of humans. Contact Nick and get him back. The constant stream of bad news had simmered Alex's temper, and his tone was even colder. If they don't send help, just take them. Okay, Emma replied with a single word, then immediately contacted the X-Men and issued the order. Within 10 minutes, a team of 20 X-Men departed from Academy City, heading for the long-discovered Weapon X research base. Meanwhile, at SHIELD headquarters in New York, Nick Fury was met by Charles, who had come to pay him a visit, his face filled with surprise. Charles, what does this mean? Nick Fury frowned, a gleam flashing in his single eye as he gazed at the frozen world around him. Charles sat in a wheelchair, his once handsome face now grim and less animated, like a dying man. Nothing much? I just hope Director Fury will do us a favor and hand Magneto and the others over. The hope he had once strived for, the hope he had seen, vanished in the blink of an eye. This realization brought home to Charles the irreconcilable conflict between humans and mutants. It also made Charles, a lifelong champion for peaceful coexistence between humans and mutants, lose his purpose and inexplicably age by decades. Is this what Emma meant? Nick Fury's face turned cold, and before he could question Charles's reaction, he asked grimly. Charles shook his head expressionlessly and said slowly, that's Alex's intention. Before Nick Fury could speak, Charles added, a hint of accusation, humanity's actions have deeply disappointed all of us mutants, especially Alex. Alex is awake. Nick Fury stared at Charles with surprise, eagerly asking, is he alright? Charles paused, a gentle smile breaking across his icy face. He nodded and said, for that alone, you're still our friend. Don't worry, Alex is fine. Nick Fury, relieved, though worried, frowned again. Of course I'm willing to hand him over to you, but what? Charles asked, noticing Nick Fury's hesitation. Magneto and his accomplices are being held in a special prison under the Pentagon? Nick Fury held out his hands, a look of resignation on his face. The U.S. military has taken them under its control, and SHIELD has no right to interfere. It's good to know they're there. We'll handle the rest ourselves. Charles breathed a sigh of relief, then turned and left SHIELD with Alex and the others behind him. Before disappearing, Charles paused again, turned to look at the motionless Nick Fury, and solemnly warned, from now on, Mr. Director, it's best if you have minimal contact with us. With these words, Charles and the others vanished from their original location, reappearing outside the Pentagon. As Charles and the others prepared to rescue Magneto and his men from the Pentagon's special prison, another X-Men team, departing from Academy City, arrived at the Weapon X research base. Gazing at the iron gate hidden beneath a dam, Gambit's Remy LeBeau, the team leader, turned to his companions and solemnly warned, "The primary goals of this operation are rescue and destruction. As a rule, we will not attack humans." Relations between mutants and humans had once again reached a freezing point, but no formal war had been declared, so avoiding killing was preferable. "What I mean is, if humans attack, we can fight back." A tall young man emerged from behind Gambit, clenching his fists. Bone claws resembling Wolverine's extended from between his fingers, a sinister grin on his face. Gambit looked at the young man, smiled sinisterly, and nodded, "Yes, Dakin." Then Chargin, Dakin, formerly known as Little Rollo and Logan's son, roared and charged first. The tightly closed iron gate proved no match for Dakin, and in a few seconds, it was reduced to husks of metal beneath his bony claws. Following Dakin, Gambit led the remaining X-Men through the gate. The Weapon X program, from its inception, was a special weapons program targeting mutants. Its leader was none other than Colonel William Stryker, a renowned anti-mutant. As a specialized military program, this hidden base naturally required military personnel, with security even tighter than that of the White House. The moment Dakin breached the iron gate, a shrill alarm rang out throughout the base, and countless armed soldiers emerged from all corners of the base, rapidly swarming toward the main entrance. Crossing a waterway, Dakin and his companions came upon a massive sluice gate blocking the path. According to known intelligence, the true base lay beyond the sluice gate. Gambit ran at full speed. Before he even reached the floodgates, several playing cards, flashing with strange lights, flew from his hands, swift as lightning, towards the gates. Behind the gates, William Stryker dropped his ongoing Experiment 11 and rushed over. Seeing Gambit and the others charging towards him, his face suddenly changed, and he shouted, "Attack immediately! Stop them!" With that, William Stryker turned and ran back to the lab. William Stryker knew that human weapons could not defeat mutants with superpowers. To defeat mutants, he needed to rely on additional superpowers, which was exactly what Weapon 11 excelled at. Running back to the laboratory quickly, William Stryker glanced at subject number 11 lying on the experimental bed, wrapped like a mummy, turned his head to look at the busy scientists beside him, and shouted, "Load the control system immediately. I want to officially activate weapon number 11, Colonel Stryker. Weapon number 11 is not ready yet." A scientist who was standing by the experimental bed looked up and looked at William Stryker in surprise. "Forced activation may cause unpredictable consequences." "I can't care about that. Activate it immediately." Thinking of the X-Men outside the sluice gate, William Stryker became more and more panicked. He pushed away the scientist in front of him, pointed at subject number 11, and shouted sternly, "I need him now, immediately, right away, no mistake in one song, one post, one content, one book, one forum." The scientists looked at each other in bewilderment, ultimately yielding to William Stryker's command, "As you wish, Colonel Stryker." Just as the scientists were preparing to activate subject 11, outside the sluice gate, Card King's repeated card blasts had ripped two narrow cracks into the concrete walls on either side of the gate. The entire gate trembled, threatening to collapse at any moment. One last time, Card King flung several more playing cards, but this time, imbued with immense energy, the cards didn't fly to the sides of the gate, but instead struck directly at its center. Amidst the roaring explosions, the massive gate shook violently, then collapsed like a mighty mountain, crushing the American soldiers bracing behind it. It was an accident. Noticing the teasing looks from Dakin and the others, Gambit shrugged nonchalantly. "Who told them to stay behind this door when they could stay anywhere else?" Tisk. Amidst the crowd scorn, Gambit took the lead, like a tiger among a flock of sheep, charging into the crowd of American soldiers in an instant. Well-equipped American soldiers might be able to sweep across many countries, but against superpowered mutants, they were no more than powerless scholars. In a flash, the American soldiers gathered at the main gate of the base fell to the ground. Some were knocked unconscious by the X-Men, but many were captured. As Gambit led Dakin and the other X-Men into the Weapon X program base, the Pentagon also welcomed its guests. "Did you find them?" Alex pushed Charles's wheelchair, dodging surveillance cameras and passing traffic with the help of his disguise, his expression focused yet nervous. The Pretender, a mutant master of disguise, can disguise himself and those around him in any environment, possessing powers comparable to invisibility. Sometimes, disguise can even be more practical than true invisibility. In his wheelchair, Charles shook his head, his face grim. Can't find them. After continuously using telepathy to track down Magneto and the others, Charles couldn't help but show signs of fatigue. The prison where Magneto and the others were imprisoned was below ground, and the consumption of telepathy was 10 times greater than usual. Descending, Charles finally sensed a trace of something and whispered in surprise, "We've found Magneto, what are we waiting for? Go!" Alex couldn't wait to run, his steps so fast that he didn't even care about the pretender beside him. "Be careful." Fortunately, Charles warned him in time, otherwise Alex would have been in great trouble. Charles's warning immediately slowed Alex's movements, but his pace remained much faster, forcing the pretender to jog to keep up. "Sorry for the several days of hiatus, I'm back to updating." Chapter 342, Saving Magneto. Charles and the others passed through several checkpoints before finally stopping at a stone wall. "What do we do now?" "Wait." Alex glanced at the long, dark corridor behind him, then at the stone wall before him, clearly a trap. A grimace crossed his face. Seeing Magneto so close to the wall, yet unable to enter, was a source of anxiety. The pretender took a deep breath, calming his rapid breathing. He said with a lingering fear, "We can't wait too long, or my disguise will be blown." Relying on disguises, a bit of chance, and waiting, they had made it through several checkpoints, but this stone wall trap wasn't going to open so easily. "Our timing wasn't good," Charles said, leaning back against his wheelchair, a bitter look on his slightly weary face. This final trap was normally sealed, only opening when Magneto was served food, and mealtime was still over 2 hours away. "So what? Should we go back?" Alex's mood was so bad, his words were harsh. Charles shook his head, his expression growing serious. "Can't just sit there and wait. I'll try to make some noise." As he spoke, he slowly raised his right hand and tapped his temple, his signature telepathic gesture. "Hey, there's already a commotion up there." Charles was about to initiate his attack when he suddenly noticed chaos erupting inside the Pentagon. Everyone was rushing about, their faces grim. Charles' voice was low, but Alex and the pretender beside him could hear it clearly and were surprised. "Are there reinforcements?" "No, it's the Weapon X project base." Charles, having immediately learned the news from an officer's head, smiled. "Gambit and the others have taken action, and it's making quite a noise." "That's great. We'd better catch them all," Alex shouted excitedly. Alex was known for his ruthlessness towards those who harmed mutants. The pretender, desperately trying to maintain his disguise, was also overcome with excitement, his entire body trembling violently. "Look out, they're coming." Charles's mind raced, and he immediately spotted someone heading their way, shouting a warning. Alex and the imposter instantly calmed down and turned to look at the end of the corridor. Dozens of heavily armed American soldiers were charging aggressively. "Have we been exposed?" Alex worried, secretly gathering energy. Red shock beams, hidden beneath his skin, were ready to burst forth at any moment. Charles, startled, immediately turned his attention to the approaching American soldiers. Then he realized, "They haven't spotted us." He chuckled softly, his voice lightened. "They're here to divert Magneto. This is our chance. Wait until they bring Magneto and the others out, and then we'll strike." Charles, realizing the American soldiers' intentions, instantly made a decision. He signaled to Alex and the imposter, explaining his plan and warning them, "Try not to kill them." In a matter of moments, over 40 American soldiers had reached the stone wall, and Charles and his men had already moved to another location to hide. At that moment, the white stone wall at the end of the corridor suddenly shook, and a section of it slowly shifted backwards, revealing a darker passageway. At the end of the passageway, a small door opened. The American soldiers shouted as they ran into the passageway. The small door swung open, revealing a vast, empty room. Charles and his companions, who hadn't followed the American soldiers into the passageway, were stunned to see no one behind the small door. "Why is there no one?" Charles was stunned for a moment before he used telepathy to locate Magneto. It turned out that the prison was located beneath a room, where Magneto and Mystique were held in 2 separate, adjacent cells. "Found them. They're underground." Charles, catching sight of the unconscious Magneto and Mystique through the eyes of one of the American soldiers, immediately informed Alex and the imposter, and simultaneously gave the order, "Alex, wait until they emerge from the passage and attack." He added a final, solemn warning, "Try to avoid any casualties, As he spoke, the American soldier, aiding Magneto and Mystique, had already exited the small door and was sprinting towards the passage. Attack, Charles warned when the American soldiers were 3 meters from the exit. At the same time, Charles activated his telepathy to its fullest extent, his powerful psychic force enveloping the entire underground prison, controlling and disrupting anyone who might notice anything unusual, including the security cameras. The moment Charles spoke, Alex's body flashed red, and a beam of energy, like a red hula hoop, shot out, whizzing towards the group of American soldiers. The American soldiers raised their guns to retaliate, but the energy beam had already severed all their weapons. The powerful impact also knocked all the soldiers unconscious, and several were covered in blood. Inspired by Alex's energy control, Alex has delved deeply into his own abilities. Now, Alex can control his shock beams with unwavering control, firing them in any form and from any position. Furthermore, Alex can manipulate the beam's energy, allowing it to injure without killing. Having instantly dispatched a group of American soldiers, a flicker of pride crossed Alex's face. He swiftly rushed over to the corpses lying on the ground, lifting Magneto and Mystique one by one. Pretender, go! Seeing Alex rushing back with Magneto and Mystique, Charles increased his telepathic power again, reminding the Pretender. The Pretender shuddered, his body flashing, and he brought Alex, Magneto, and Mystique under his control. The Pretender activated, and the group instantly vanished. Run, we don't have much time. Charles' face was pale. After just less than a minute of outburst, Charles felt that his mental strength had been squandered, and his head was aching like needles. The pretenders did not dare to neglect, took a deep breath, and walked faster and faster. In less than half the time, they ran out of the corridor. Rushing all the way, after several life-or-death experiences, the group finally ran out of the underground prison and arrived at the Pentagon. However, what greeted Charles and his group was not freedom, but more American soldiers. The dense American soldiers surrounded the Pentagon, and not even a fly could fly out. Fortunately, these American soldiers did not seem to be targeting Charles and his group, otherwise they would definitely not be able to escape. Chapter 343 Deadpool. With the help of the imposters, the group hid in a corner. Charles, ignoring his flailing head, forced his telepathy and was stunned by the message that came to him. Mutants have declared war on humans. Really? Alex stared at Charles in disbelief. His strength gave way, and Mystique, on his back, fell to the ground. Charles glanced at Mystique, then turned to Alex, his face filled with frustration. I don't know if it's true or not. I got this information from the soldiers' heads. Knowing Alex and Emma, Charles knew war wouldn't break out. But the American soldiers standing ready before him didn't look fake. Worse still, Charles was temporarily unable to use his telepathy due to the previous forced activation. No matter what, we have to get out. After a long silence, Charles finally gave up, watching the American soldiers pacing back and forth nearby, his face filled with anxiety. Burst. Alex twisted his body, his face eager. Charles nodded silently. In this situation, Charles couldn't care less about the safety of the humans. What about them? The Pretender worried. Alex was the only one still able to fight, but Alex alone couldn't protect everyone. There were 2 unconscious people, plus 1 in a wheelchair. As the Pretender finished speaking, Mystique and Magneto, lying on the ground, sat up, their faces grim. Just take care of yourselves, Magneto. Charles tensed at the sight of Magneto awakening. He couldn't control Magneto in his current state. And with Mystique beside him, too. Don't worry, we won't do anything rash. Magneto glanced at Charles, rubbing his slightly stiff body. Humans have been injecting us with drugs, so we don't have many abilities now. Drugs? Can they weaken your abilities? Charles was horrified, forgetting Magneto's threat. He retorted in disbelief, how is that possible? Childish. Mystique snorted, her face full of sarcasm. Humans have been studying mutants for decades, and there's more than just the Weapon X program. Charles remained silent. Mutants had been known to the world since World War II. No government would ignore such superpowers. Secret research was a normal thing, especially after the Cuban Missile Crisis. Thinking of this, Charles suddenly realized that mutants had made almost no progress in recent years, while humans had made great strides. With the rapid development of technology, the gap between humans and mutants was gradually narrowing. Humanity's secrets far exceed your imagination. Magneto's voice interrupted Charles's reverie. He pointed at the American soldiers in the distance, his expression suddenly cold. The most important thing now is to find a way to escape. Thousands of miles away, in the secret base of the Weapon X program, Dakin led the charge, sweeping away all enemies with overwhelming force. With a murderous aura, he finally broke into the base's laboratory. The mummy lying on the laboratory bed had just been activated. Beside the bed, several scientists in white coats lay dead on the ground, shot on the chest. Colonel William Stryker sat at a computer, gun in hand. The screen displayed a message he had just sent. Mutants have declared war on humanity. Stryker, you're courting death. Dakin's face darkened upon seeing the message on the computer screen. He roared wildly and rushed towards William Stryker like lightning. William Stryker seemed frozen in fear, motionless. Just as Dakin's bony claws were about to pierce William Stryker's chest, a figure suddenly flashed out. Before Dakin could get distracted, William Stryker had vanished from sight, replaced by a monstrous figure covered in pustules. Who are you? Dakin's bestial instincts told him the monster before him was formidable, and he dared not let up even a little. Deadpool, you can call me that, the man calling himself Deadpool grinned, his face becoming even more terrifying. Dakin grew increasingly wary, cautiously asking, where is Stryker? Where did you take him? His keen senses told him William Stryker was no longer in the lab. Now, it's between you and me, Deadpool smiled again, stretching his arms. Two long, narrow katanas emerged from between his fingers, resembling Wolverine's adamantium claws. Dakin was startled at first, then quickly realized what was happening, staring at Deadpool in disbelief. Are you the Weapon X they're developing? The Weapon X program was a secretive affair, known only to a select few mutants, including Dakin. Who knows? Deadpool shrugged nonchalantly. Dakin was about to continue asking when Deadpool rushed forward, two samurai swords flashing like two lightning bolts, piercing Dakin's chest. Fuck, Dakin cursed, rolled over to avoid the long swords, and immediately prepared to counterattack. Unfortunately, an inch longer is an inch stronger. Due to the inherent weakness of the weapons, Dakin had no time to counterattack. Deadpool flew into the air, brandishing two long swords and killing him from behind. Dakin barely raised his arms to block his chest, but heard a snap and a sharp pain from his hands. The two pairs of bone claws were broken at the root. Shit, Dakin shouted angrily, ignoring the pain in his hands, but his body kept falling back. Deadpool's strength far exceeded Dakin's expectations. Surprisingly, Deadpool didn't catch up. With a flick of his swords, he pulled the broken bone from the ground into his hands. He toyed with it and exclaimed in delight, nice bone. Perfect to take home and feed the dog, %, and then Dakin's face twisted. He longed to charge and rip Deadpool into pieces, but turning back to Deadpool's two adamantium blades, he hesitated. As the son of Wolverine Logan, Dakin knew the power of adamantium. Just as Dakin hesitated, Gambit and his X-Men finally charged in. Seeing Dakin and Deadpool facing each other, Gambit was startled. With a flick of his staff, he soared into the air, leaping over Deadpool and landing in front of Dakin. Dakin, who's this guy? Gambit observed Deadpool, who was carefully grasping Dakin's finger bones, with a hint of surprise. Dakin covered his hands and gritted his teeth, saying, he calls himself Deadpool and is a product of the Weapon X program. Besides those adamantium blades, he might be able to teleport, but I'm not sure about his other abilities. I didn't expect William Stryker to actually pull it off. Gambit looked at Deadpool in astonishment. As far as he knew, this might be the only successful experimental subject in the entire Weapon X program. You go down first, I'll meet him, be careful, he's very powerful. Dakin nodded and walked over as he was told, but his eyes were always locked on Deadpool. Only then did Deadpool come to his senses, looked up at Gambit, folded his arms over his chest, and said with a smile, so you're a magician. Show me a magic trick. If you're good enough, I'll give you a reward. The adorable Deadpool is here, everyone welcome. Chapter 344 X-Men vs. Deadpool. Deadpool's words drew everyone's attention to Gambit. At first glance, Gambit truly looked like a magician, dressed in a black trench coat, a magician's hat, and a cane in hand, a classic magic trick. Deadpool's words were a bit lacking. Gambit glared at Deadpool, but Deadpool remained oblivious, pretending to be watching the show intently. Hurry up. I'm waiting, Gambit snorted coldly, flicking his left hand. 4 cards shot out from between his fingers, tracing an eerie, banana-like arc through the air and striking Deadpool from both sides. That's good. I like it. Deadpool remained motionless, staring at Gambit with surprise, then confusion. "Excuse me, where did those cards come from?" Elsewhere, William Stryker, who had been sent away by Deadpool, rushed into a hidden room. Inside was a massive computer with a massive screen dominating the entire wall. On the huge screen was the image of Gambit performing a move, seemingly from Deadpool's perspective. William Stryker hurried to his computer. Noticing Deadpool was only talking, he couldn't help but feel annoyed. "Fuck. I really should have shut his mouth." With a curse, William Stryker began to control the computer, typing in a command, "Kill them all." The moment the command was issued, the image on the giant screen trembled, and Deadpool sprang into action. In the lab, Deadpool, who had been chattering away, suddenly shut up. He clutched his hands to his chest and suddenly thrust out two long swords, slashing with lightning speed. The sharp blade struck the 4 playing cards with such precision that they seemed ready to cleave them in half. Deadpool's action caught the King of Cards off guard. He stared at Deadpool in surprise, his eyes narrowed, and he whispered, "Explode." The King of Cards could imbue any object with kinetic energy and then detonate it. The playing cards were his weapons. With the King's words, the 4 playing cards exploded simultaneously, their immense energy instantly impacting Deadpool. Deadpool's arms were shattered, revealing the silvery bones within. Like Wolverine, Deadpool also possessed adamantium implants. Deadpool's already hideous face became even more terrifying, resembling a pile of rotten flesh forced together, or the fragmented figures of an abstract painting, a sight that was unforgettable. Unbelievably, Deadpool seemed completely insensitive. With only skeletal hands left, he wielded his longsword and charged towards Gambit. Everyone was stunned, staring at Deadpool in stunned silence. Even Gambit was momentarily stunned, unable to believe that the skeleton before him could still fight. "He's healing." At that moment, Dakin shouted from the side. He remained vigilant against Deadpool, even after such a devastating blow. Consequently, Dakin immediately noticed that Deadpool's skeletal arm was rapidly healing, with fresh flesh forming at the wound, gradually enveloping the silvery bones. Gambit snapped back to his senses at the sound, only to see Deadpool charging towards him. 2 long blades were within an inch of his heart, and Gambit could practically feel the chill of the sharp tips. "Teleport." Gambit's mind went blank, his ears echoing with Dakin's words. At this crucial moment, one of the X-Men flashed onto the battlefield, narrowly escaping Gambit. In the secluded room, William Stryker watched helplessly as Gambit escaped Deadpool's blow. "Teleport." After a few complaints, William Stryker typed a new command into his computer. In the lab, Gambit glanced at Deadpool with lingering fear, repeatedly thanking the teleporter who had saved him. He then called all the X-Men together, his expression solemn. "X-Men, assemble." The X-Men had battled many superpowered beings, and teleportation was undoubtedly one of their most formidable. With the ability to teleport and possess remarkable self-healing abilities, Deadpool is undoubtedly the most formidable opponent the X-Men have ever faced. At this moment, Deadpool, having fully recovered, suddenly stopped, leaving the already awaited X-Men looking at each other in bewilderment. "I don't feel good." Dakin stood in the center of the X-Men, his brow furrowed in a rare state of nervousness. Gambit, clutching 5 cards, stared intently at Deadpool. Upon hearing Dakin's words, he quickly asked, "What's wrong, Dakin?" "I don't know, I just feel danger." Dakin's animal-like instincts allow him to keenly sense danger, yet he can't predict its precise nature. Gambit was about to speak when he heard several exclamations. Turning to look, Deadpool's eyes suddenly glowed red, and 2 red beams shot out like lasers. The energy contained within them shocked Gambit. "What's this?" Gambit's mind suddenly flashed back to the X-School, the student nicknamed One-Eyed, who had also unleashed powerful energy blasts from his eyes. But now wasn't the time to dwell on that. Gambit discarded the thoughts that had been swirling in his mind and leaped forward. His palms spun like windmills, transforming into a shield that actually blocked the energy blast. Although he managed to block it, the force of the blast was far beyond imagination. Gambit's body involuntarily recoiled, his rapidly spinning hands growing increasingly strained, and his face paled as a sheet, his strength at its limit. Seeing this, Dakin's face drastically changed. With a low growl, he dropped his hands to the ground and charged at Deadpool like a beast. The remaining X-Men also came to their senses. Some helped Gambit share the burden, while others followed Dakin and attacked Deadpool. In the secret room, William Stryker, observing the completely suppressed X-Men, smirked triumphantly. "Yes, that's it. This is our weapon X. Kill." Deadpool, A triumphant William Stryker again keyed in, unleashing Deadpool's ultimate killing mode. In his ultimate killing mode, Deadpool no longer possessed any consciousness, becoming a pure killing machine, annihilating all enemies in sight. Deadpool at this moment was at his most powerful. After his explosion, Deadpool truly became different, brimming with murderous intent. He suddenly vanished, reappearing behind and attacking X-Man. Two long blades stabbed diagonally from behind, mercilessly piercing the X-Man's chest, the bloodless blades piercing his heart. Fuck, Dakin, sprinting forward, watched helplessly as his companions perished at Deadpool's hands. His face was stained with blood. He roared in anger, accelerating. Unfortunately, Deadpool seemed unwilling to engage Dakin. Drawing his long blades, he vanished again, reappearing behind another X-Man. In a matter of seconds, 5 X-Men had fallen to the ground. Deadpool, Gambit's eyes blazed with blood, yet he was powerless. Faced with Deadpool's ruthless attack, no one, save Dakin, possessing Wolverine-like super healing abilities, could fight back. Yet, Deadpool deliberately avoided Dakin. Yes, that's it, William Stryker, who had witnessed the entire incident from hiding in the room, his round face flushed with excitement. Kill them all, kill all the mutants. Deadpool's abilities are adapted from the movie, from Wolverine, of course, not the Deadpool movie, but the comic's verbal attacks will remain. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 345 Super Deadpool. As the X-Men were being brutally slaughtered by Deadpool, Charles and his men in the Pentagon were preparing to break out. Don't kill. Charles reached out and grabbed Magneto's arm, warning him sternly, the situation is unclear right now. We can't exacerbate the conflict between the two sides, no matter what the final outcome. Magneto scoffed and shook Charles' hand off, looking at him mockingly with disdain in his eyes. Can you stop me, Eric? Don't be so ruthless. Charles sighed, a little angry. If you hadn't acted rashly, the situation would never have been so bad. Ultimately, Charles still had some resentment towards Magneto's actions. Humans and mutants were bound to reach this point eventually. I just pushed it forward, Magneto snorted coldly, his face expressionless. Don't harbor any illusions. They're unrealistic, stop arguing. Get out of here. Seeing the tense situation between Charles and Magneto, Mystique abruptly stood up and glanced at them, her face gloomy. The situation is getting worse. The American soldiers have begun searching the Pentagon. Hearing Mystique's words, Charles and Magneto shifted their gaze. Turning their heads, they saw the American soldiers, who had just been patrolling, now meticulously searching every corner of the building, approaching their hiding place. Kill them, Magneto shouted, leading the way out of the disguise created by the Pretender. Seeing Magneto rush out, followed closely by Mystique, Charles and the other two exchanged a glance and felt compelled to follow. Charles was now powerless and could only be pushed along by the imposter. Seeing Magneto had already made his move, he quickly called out, Alex, keep an eye on Magneto, let's take care of ourselves first. Charles. Alex glanced at Magneto and shook his head, refusing Charles's command. Let's find a way to escape first. As he spoke, Alex, bearing the imposter, raced outward along the path Magneto had taken. Magneto hadn't actually killed anyone. Although many American soldiers had fallen, covered in wounds and looking horrific, most of their injuries were not fatal and not life-threatening. In this situation, killing wouldn't have been very meaningful and might even have inflamed the soldiers' bloodlust, something Magneto didn't want. So, Magneto deliberately injured rather than killed them, using the cries of the dying to intimidate the American soldiers. Magneto's tactics were highly successful, and many of them retreated under his drastic measures. With unstoppable force, Charles and his crew finally escaped the Pentagon and reunited with the X-Men who had arrived to rescue them. In truth, Sage had already arrived with his men when the anomaly at the Pentagon surfaced. However, the Pentagon was unlike any other place, and Sage didn't dare rush in with the X-Men, so he waited outside. Upon seeing Charles and his crew finally emerge, Sage hurried over to meet them. Sage immediately spotted Magneto and Mystique, signaling to the X-Men nearby to keep them under guard. Turning to Charles, who slumped in his wheelchair, he asked with concern, Charles, are you alright? Charles shook his head, glancing at the wary Magneto and Mystique nearby. He then asked, "Sage, what happened? Why is the Pentagon suddenly under martial law?" "It wasn't you." Sage froze in his tracks, his words uttered unconsciously. He caught his breath, then stared at Charles in surprise. Seeing Sage's expression, Charles knew she didn't understand either. He smiled wryly, shook his head, and said, "Forget it, let's go back." When Charles and his group of a dozen or so returned to the Uncanny Valley, Alex, Emma, and the other 4 girls appeared. Seeing Magneto, Alex rushed forward without a word, delivering a powerful punch filled with Alex's dissatisfaction and resentment towards Magneto. Magneto was powerful, but his body was only slightly better than an average human's. Alex's blow instantly reduced the shrew to the ground, curling up like a shrimp. "Lock them up and keep them under strict supervision," Alex said, then vanished, leaving Charles, Sage, and the others bewildered. What happened? Charles' heart skipped a beat, a sense of foreboding washing over him. He turned to Emma, his expression tense. Emma frowned, her face filled with worry. "Maybe there's some trouble with Gambit." "Gambit, what's wrong?" Charles had been in New York and was unaware of Alex's other plans. "Gambit led a team of X-Men to destroy the secret Weapon X base," Emma explained after ordering her men to take Magneto and Mystique away. "But it's been so long, and there's no news from them." Charles's heart finally settled after hearing Emma's explanation, and he reassured her with a relieved look. Maybe they were delayed by something else. However, the reality was different. In the Weapon X secret base laboratory, facing Deadpool's slaughter, the X-Men, led by Gambit and Daken, were almost defenseless. After sacrificing 7 of their companions, the X-Men finally clung together to defend against Deadpool's teleportation. But every time the X-Men gathered, Deadpool unleashed his laser energy blasts, forcing them to separate again. Unrelated sentence fragment, a single sentence, a single issue, a single content, a single book, a single forum. Watching their former allies fall one by one before them, the surviving X-Men, like Gambit and Daken, felt their eyes bleed and their hearts suffocate. One X-Man, unable to bear the excitement, made a suicidal dash towards Deadpool, only to be reduced to ash by his laser beam. Hiding in his room, William Stryker grew increasingly excited, dancing with joy. After once again admiring the unconcealed despair on the X-Men's faces, William Stryker prepared to issue his final command: "It's over. Kill them all." Deadpool, with a clattering sound, the new command was completed. Just as William Stryker was about to send it, he froze. A figure suddenly appeared on the giant screen before him. Alex. William Stryker knew Alex and was aware of his strength, so he immediately wanted to escape. But then, thinking back to Deadpool's performance, a hint of pride crossed his lips. He quickly deleted the previous command and retyped, "Kill this guy." Alex didn't know the location of the secret base. He had been searching all the way here, which took some time. Upon emerging, Alex spotted Gambit and the others huddled together. Just as he was about to ask, he suddenly saw the bodies of the X-Men on the ground. Alex froze, a surge of uncontrollable fire surging from his heart. "Who did this?" Alex's voice was as cold and terrifying as if it came from hell. The first chapter of the new year, wishing everyone a happy new year. Chapter 346 Alex Goes Rampage. X-Men have fought thousands of battles, both large and small, with casualties inevitable, and even nearing destruction. But Alex had never been furious like he was now. His bloodshot eyes raked around him like a hungry wolf, and a thick, murderous aura coalesced around him. Alex had single-handedly built the X-Men from scratch, and he held a deep bond with them. Alex could accept the X-Men's defeat, even their death, but not this kind of outcome. Looking at the bodies of the fallen X-Men, Alex could imagine the carnage that had unfolded just minutes before. "You?" Alex's deadly gaze swept across the room, finally landing on the lone outsider, Deadpool. Under William Stryker's control, Deadpool didn't respond. In a flash, he appeared behind Alex, stabbing with 2 long blades like lightning. "A mere trick," Alex muttered, unflinching and slowly turning his body, his back to Deadpool. His face was expressionless, his eyes as cold as if he were looking at a corpse. Deadpool, or rather, William Stryker behind him, was startled by Alex's gaze and jumped to his feet, sweat pouring down his face. "This isn't human." William Stryker was stunned for a few seconds before snapping back to his senses and fleeing. In the lab, Alex controlled Deadpool's adamantium skeleton through magnetic fields, easily subduing him. Furious, Alex continued to exert his might, attempting to rip the entire skeleton from Deadpool's body. Although William Stryker had given up on Deadpool, his final command, "Kill all mutants," still lingered. Deadpool, undaunted by his command, struggled mightily to break free from Alex's control. Unfortunately, in the face of sheer strength, Deadpool was but an ant. Even Deadpool's ultimate teleportation technique, the one he relied on for his slaughter, was broken. How could he teleport when his own skeleton was being ripped apart? Losing all his means of attack, coupled with the excruciating pain of his adamantium skeleton being ripped out, plunged Deadpool into complete chaos. Forced commands and the excruciating pain in his body assaulted Deadpool's mind, and finally, inexplicably, he released the control and suddenly regained consciousness. Wait, Deadpool's mouth, previously tightly shut, suddenly came to life as he regained consciousness. "Please promise to treat me well, so I can treat others well." What? Alex was stunned, unable to react. While Alex was distracted, Deadpool moved again, attempting to escape Alex. Unfortunately, as Deadpool moved, Alex regained his composure and re-engaged, firmly restraining Deadpool. "Okay, actually, what I wanted to say is," Deadpool, seeing his plan fail, rolled his eyes and said dejectedly, "Your clothes are really ugly." Alex was left in a state of confusion. What kind of person was this? Alex, he's the only successful test subject in the Weapon X program. At this moment, Gambit, supported by Dakin, approached and looked up at Deadpool, his face filled with anger. All our people died at his hands, and he rescued William Stryker. William Stryker, Alex thought, immediately using telepathy to search Deadpool's memories. But to Alex's disappointment, Deadpool's memories were a mess, fragmented like countless shredded film reels. Finding any information about William Stryker was difficult. Giving up telepathy, Alex began to search the entire base with his telekinesis, trying to find William Stryker. After a long search, Alex found nothing. William Stryker had escaped. Let's go back. Alex stopped torturing Deadpool and teleported away, carrying all the X-Men, including the bodies on the ground. However, before Alex vanished, he unleashed a massive energy bomb. The bomb, containing only 10% of Alex's energy, went haywire the moment Alex vanished. With a tremendous explosion, a mushroom cloud rose into the sky, instantly reducing the entire secret base to ash, leaving only a massive crater in its place. Back in Uncanny Valley, Emma, Charles, and the others immediately rushed over. Seeing the beleaguered Gambit and Dakin's group, everyone was shocked. Seeing the bodies of the X-Men, everyone was furious. Relations between mutants and humans had taken a sharp turn for the worse. Mutants had always upheld their line and refrained from killing any humans. But now, yet another mutant had died at the hands of a human, a fate unsettling for all mutants. Even Charles, who had always advocated for peaceful coexistence, fell silent, his face gloomy and terrifying. Alex took in everyone's expressions, his face gradually brightening. But when he spoke, his tone was icy. "I want revenge." Can you interrupt?" Alex's words stunned everyone. Just then, a strange voice rang out. Alex spun around, looking at Deadpool, who raised his right hand. His brow furrowed, and he demanded impatiently, "If you have something to say, say it now. If you have something to say, say it now." Alex had many grievances against Deadpool and wanted to kill him immediately to vent his anger. However, Deadpool was the only successful experiment in the Weapon X program, and his research value was extremely high. Killing him would be a shame. Furthermore, Deadpool already had the X gene in his body. Even if it was implanted, he was still a mutant. "I suddenly realized that your clothes are actually quite nice." With Alex's permission, Deadpool immediately smiled. He looked Alex up and down, pointed at Emma and the others, and said with certainty, "Compared to these guys, the entire place was ablaze." Everyone staring at Deadpool in disbelief, completely bewildered by the strange creature's sudden appearance. Was this the time to be spouting such nonsense? "Shut up, Deadpool." Alex, having already experienced Deadpool's mouth, was too lazy to bother with him and threatened him with a sinister expression. Deadpool, however, refused to give in, twisting his body to escape Dakin's grip, still shouting, "Only if I die." "You don't have to die." Alex, exasperated, reached out and wiped Deadpool's lips, pressing them together tightly. No matter how hard he tried, Deadpool couldn't open his lips, and could only make cum sounds from his throat. "Okay, finally quiet." Seeing Deadpool's impatience, Alex smiled, turned to Emma and the others, and continue the previous topic. Go ahead, what suggestions do you have? Alex, returning from the Pentagon, was the first to speak up. With profound experience, he strongly agreed with Alex's revenge plan. We must pay back the humans, otherwise they'll think we're easy to bully. It's time to teach them a lesson. Charles was the next to speak, his wheelchair-bound figure seeming to age decades. Emma and the others followed suit, and Alex's revenge plan was a complete success. Chapter 347, Revenge of Times Square. Minutes later, Alex and the 12 X-Men appeared in New York's Times Square, making no effort to conceal their presence, appearing openly and undisguised, not even to hide their mutations. Times Square was bustling at noon, and the sudden and uncanny appearance of Alex and his companions immediately attracted considerable attention. For this act of retaliation, Alex carefully selected the 12 X-Men, including charismatic leaders like Emma and Charles, destructive warriors like Alex and Gambit, special talents like Elixir and Nightcrawler, and even 2 seemingly insignificant mutants. Alex wanted to showcase the full range of mutants, not just their strength, but also their attitude. They are mutants. Someone recognized the identities of Alex and others, and his high-pitched voice was full of joy. This person seemed to be a fan of X-Men, shouting and pushing through the crowd to rush in. X-Men, they are X-Men. At this moment, several armed helicopters flew over from the sky, and shrill alarms rang from all directions on the crowded streets. Countless soldiers armed with live ammunition dispersed the crowd and surrounded them aggressively, followed closely by several cars with the SHIELD logo. Nick Fury, dressed in a black trench coat, hurriedly scrambled down from the car, pushing aside the American soldiers who attempted to intercept him. He quickly rushed over to Alex, glanced around, and hushed his voice. Alex, what are you trying to do? Teach humanity a lesson? Alex stared at Nick Fury expressionlessly, his words cold and expressionless, while secretly warning him through telepathic communication. SHIELD, stay out of this. Nick Fury's face was filled with bitterness, his single eye fixed on Alex for a moment, then he spoke with a sense of melancholy. We are SHIELD. SHIELD had been established to defend against any threat to Earth's safety, and now Alex and his companions had become SHIELD's targets. Excuse me, Alex thought for a moment, nodded, and with a raised right hand, Nick Fury slowly floated up to the stunned eyes of the humans, like a marionette being lifted. A normal person would have cried out in despair, but Nick Fury, a veteran of World War II and well-versed in Alex's character, showed no fear, remaining unfazed from beginning to end. Brother, make some noise. Alex's face strained, secretly sulking. He quickly telepathically contacted Nick Fury. Nick, I'm trying to intimidate the humans. Please cooperate. Revenge was only a means, the threat was the goal. Nick Fury finally realized what was happening, but it was too late to act. He feared it would backfire. I'm sorry, Alex apologized, and with a flick of his right hand, Nick Fury soared through the air like a missile, vanishing into the sky in the blink of an eye. His shrill, terrifying screams lingered in the air. From Alex's attack to Nick Fury's demise, the entire process took only 5 seconds. Whether it was the heavily armed American soldiers or the humans who hadn't had time to evacuate, only recovered their composure when Nick Fury's screams rang out. Screams echoed, and the humans who had gathered outside the American soldiers, ready to watch the excitement, scattered like birds and beasts. In the blink of an eye, the vast Times Square was emptier, with only a few brave humans daring to remain on the streets. Mutants, surrender immediately, or, an American general, hiding behind a tank, shouted through a megaphone. His words were powerful, but his voice trembled throughout, suggesting that he wasn't as imposing as he appeared. Shut up. At Alex's signal, Xuan the Siren stepped forward, gave a gentle scolding, and unleashed a sonic wave. Xuan's sonic attack was very similar to that of the inhuman Black Bolt, though the power was far greater. Even so, Xuan's sonic wave was still not to be underestimated. Under Xuan's control, the powerful wave converged into a straight line, sweeping down dozens of American soldiers and a tank, aiming to hit the general's megaphone. With a piercing noise, the megaphone in the general's hand shattered, but the general remained unharmed. We are mutants, and we are also X-Men. Alex emerged from the crowd, slowly floating into the air like a descending god. His majestic, ethereal voice radiated, emanating from all directions until it could be heard throughout New York. We have good intentions towards humanity, but, Alex continued, pointing his finger and conjuring a massive screen with energy. It began to show scenes from the secret Weapon X base. But some humans remain hostile to us, constantly attacking and harming us, using our fellow humans for human experiments. Alex used sound and images to vividly depict the suffering inflicted on mutants by humans. Perhaps we've been humble for too long, Alex concluded his last words, his expression gradually turning colder, a murderous aura etched on him. Now, we're here for revenge, I'm sorry. With Alex's final whisper, the long-awaited X-Men charged forward, their attacks unleashed by crimson energy blasts, flying playing cards, and pervasive sonic waves. The American soldiers frantically launched to counterattack, their guns blazing. Most of the bullets rained down upon the X-Men, but some flew wide, catching many New Yorkers in the crossfire. The attack helicopters in the sky and the tanks on the ground also responded, raining shells from the sky, unconcerned with Times Square. Alex remained silent, allowing the bullets to rain down on the civilians and the shells to shatter tall buildings, watching with indifference as innocent people wept and wailed amid the fire and rubble. Of course, the X-Men weren't completely indifferent. Langdon, along with Nightcrawler and the two less powerful mutants, set out to rescue people, risking the imminent threat of being shot by humans. Sorry, we have no intention of becoming enemies with humans. They're forcing us to do this, Langdon would say before each rescue attempt. Regardless of the humans' willingness, he would proceed. Emma and Charles stayed out of the fight. They stood behind Alex, their gaze fixed on Langdon and his companions. Is there any point in doing this? In fact, many humans were furiously cursing Langdon and his companions. Whether it makes sense or not, Alex shook his head expressionlessly. I just want peace of mind, that's enough. With a roar, a flaming figure streaked down from the horizon, aiming directly at Alex in midair. First chapter, next chapter in half an hour. Chapter 348 Fantastic Four. The man arrived with incredible speed, arriving before he could even make a sound. However, the force of the attack, initially as powerful as a tiger's, suddenly stopped abruptly, as if struck by something. The flaming figure suddenly froze in midair, less than 2 meters away from Alex. No matter how the fire figure shouted and cursed, he could not move an inch. Alex waved his hand and wiped away the flames rising from the fire figure, revealing his true form within. He was a very handsome young man, exuding a scoundrel-like air, resembling a street thug. Are you a mutant? Alex released the young man's control, sizing him up and down, somewhat surprised. Feeling the pressure on him ease, the young man immediately mobilized his newfound abilities, but despite repeated attempts, the flame within him seemed completely dormant and would not emerge at all. Even when a flame did emerge, it only penetrated through the skin, making it completely useless. Upon hearing Alex's words, the enraged young man retorted with a sneer, I'm not some shitty mutant, you're testing my limits, little one. Alex narrowed his eyes, glaring at the young man with a murderous look. The young man snorted and turned away, ignoring Alex. Furious, Alex was about to strike the young man in the face when a sudden impulse struck him. He lowered his arm, shifted sideways a few steps, and turned back to where he had been standing, his expression grave. So there's help, you can see me, a clear female voice tinged with barely concealed surprise, as a blonde girl materialized from midair. Alex's mind flashed as he turned back to the young man, a sudden realization dawning on him, the Fantastic Four, the sight of a handsome young man radiating fire and a blonde beauty capable of invisibility. These two together immediately reminded Alex of the Fantastic Four, that family-like group of heroes. You know us, Invisible Woman, also known as Susan, looked at Alex in disbelief. We just came up with that name 2 hours ago? Alex ignored Susan's surprise and glanced around. Seeing no sign of the other two, he couldn't help but feel confused. Where's Reed Richards? And that thing, Ben? Where are they? It seems you really know us well. Susan looked at Alex with a serious and meaningful expression, and began to explain. Reed and the others are on their way. They'll be here soon. Alex frowned. With the Fantastic Four appearing, the other superheroes weren't far behind. The true age of heroes was about to begin. And for mutants, this was definitely not good news. With a continuous emergence of human superheroes, humans would only become more arrogant and less likely to take mutants seriously. Then, the situation for mutants would become even more difficult. I don't want to be your enemy, Alex pondered for a long time, then spoke carefully. You've probably seen what humans have done to mutants. To survive, we must keep fighting. This silenced Susan and Johnny. After a long pause, Susan coughed and said, This is just the despicable behavior of a small number of humans. You can't blame everyone else, I know. That's why we didn't attack ordinary people and even offered to treat them. Alex smiled and pointed at the busy Lincoln and his men. Susan watched Lincoln and his men darting through the hail of gunfire, her face filled with embarrassment, truly at a loss for words. Just then, a strangely shaped plane pierced through the skyscrapers and countless artillery fire, landing on the ground below Alex. A tall young man emerged from the plane. It was Reed Richards, the leader of the Fantastic Four. He was still wearing a white lab coat, evidently having just escaped from the lab without even having time to change. Following Reed, Ben the Thing emerged with heavy steps. Reed watched Alex, who had also fallen to the ground, and glanced covertly at Susan and Johnny. After confirming they were alright, he spoke. Fighting won't solve the problem. Fighting certainly won't solve the problem. Alex nodded in agreement, then changed the subject. But at least it will deter some humans from attacking mutants. Reed Richards' abilities might not be the strongest among all Marvel superheroes, but his brilliant mind was undoubtedly among the best in the Marvel universe. Known as God of Deity, Reed Richards was enough to make Alex treat him with caution. Perhaps we could sit down and talk it out. Reed frowned. From the information Susan had passed on, he had a general understanding of the conflict between mutants and humans. Resolving it might be impossible, but he could still try to ease it. Talk. With those political bastards, Alex sneered, his face filled with disdain. I'm so sorry, but they're responsible for everything that's happening now. Thinking of the approaching age of heroes, Alex grew increasingly irritated. Time was running out for the mutants. Unwilling to tangle with the Fantastic Four any longer, Alex simply ordered them to leave. Go away. Pretend you didn't see anything and know nothing about it. Excuse me, we can't just stand by and watch. Reed shook his head and sternly refused. You really shouldn't have gotten involved in this mess. Alex looked at Reed's determined expression, a bitter look on his face. Even if you expel us, humans won't be grateful. They'll only become more wary of you. Mutants aren't special. You two are the same. All those with superpowers are feared by humans. They're constantly on guard against you, and might even kill you at any moment, just like they do to us mutants. This wasn't an exaggeration on Alex's part. From the Marvel comics and materials he'd sporadically read, ordinary humans in the Marvel universe showed a very hostile attitude towards those with superpowers. This was especially true of governments, who later seemed to have introduced a superhero registration act similar to the Mutant Registration Act. Ben's face, cracked and grimacing, grinned, a hint of sarcasm on its cracked, stone-lined face. You're quite the talker. Clearly disbelieving Alex, Ben turned and looked around, waving his gnarled arms and roaring. They'll think we're heroes after defeating you. Defeat them, kill them. Ben's roar evoked a response from many, including not only the American soldiers still fighting but also ordinary citizens, many of whom had been saved by the elixir. Alex remained silent, as did Charles and Emma. Even the fighting X-Men paused, leaving only the deafening roar of battle on the battlefield. In that case, all of you attack, Alex sighed, stepping back to allow the Fantastic Four to gather. The Fantastic Four had made their appearance, so who are they waiting for next? Chapter 349, Fighting the Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four exchanged glances, glancing at Emma and Charles from the corner of their eyes. The self-important Fantastic Four weren't offended by Alex's slight, believing it was pointless. They needed to prove themselves with action. Their only concern was that Alex wasn't the only mutant present. Don't worry, they won't attack. I'm your only opponent, Alex said, immediately noticing the Fantastic Four's gazes. He smiled faintly and glanced at Emma and Charles, who tactfully stepped back, making their stance clear. Even Reed, feeling slightly infuriated by being slighted twice in a row, said, "Be careful, we're about to strike." Reed's warning prompted the Fantastic Four to launch their attack. Surprisingly, the first to charge forward wasn't Johnny the Human Torch, the fastest of them all, but the massive Thing, Ben. The Thing moved like a heavily armored vehicle, its every step shaking the ground. "Try my fist," Ben, grinning, swung his massive arm. His fist, the size of a human head, struck Alex's head with incredible force, like a meteorite striking the earth. Alex, eager to test the Fantastic Four's power, didn't dodge, even concealing his energy absorption. With a crisp crack, Alex felt his entire head explode. The force from the Thing's fist seemed to penetrate Alex's skull and impact his brain directly, shattering it completely. "You're too arrogant," Alex immediately thought, and he quickly activated his elixir ability to heal the immediate injuries, while also activating his energy absorption. With energy absorption, Alex was practically invincible. As Alex had anticipated, upon noticing Alex's unconsciousness from Ben's punch, Johnny the Human Torch, waiting for his opportunity, charged forward with a roar, his body ablaze with flames. A white fireball flew from Johnny's palm, aimed directly at Alex's back. To the Fantastic Four's surprise, Johnny's white fireball mysteriously vanished the moment it made contact with Alex, as if merging into his body. Susan, who had just activated her cloaking force field to trap Alex, turned and looked at Reed in surprise. What's going on? It must be energy absorption. Reed, worthy of being the smartest person on Marvel Earth, immediately noticed Alex's energy absorption ability and immediately came up with an idea. Energy absorption has its limits, the total amount and the speed. The Fantastic Four were all highly intelligent, and Reed's simple words were enough for the others to grasp and secretly coordinate their actions. The elixir's healing effect was remarkable. Even with his head nearly exploding, Alex quickly recovered. However, when Alex regained consciousness, he realized he was trapped, entangled in Reed's hundreds of twists and turns. Susan and the other two surrounded him, attacking him frantically under Reed's control. The three's attacks were like drumbeats, landing in rhythmic patterns on the gaps Reed had deliberately left. The sudden burst of energy nearly frightened Alex. Energy absorption was akin to a cheat, but it also had its drawbacks. Besides the two limitations Reed had mentioned, if the energy absorbed was isolated, the ability became useless. Just like Sebastian Shaw in the movie, who was controlled by Charles's telepathy, his energy absorption was ineffective, and he ultimately died under Magneto's coin. Of course, these limitations and flaws posed no problem to Alex, because Alex possessed more than just energy absorption. I can do that move of yours, Reed. Alex carefully felt the attacks of Susan and the other two, a look of caution crossing his face. He looked down at Reed and slowly said, "Now, let's see mine." During his battle with Apocalypse, Alex had replicated Apocalypse's abilities. His extreme control of his body, down to the atomic level, could achieve a similar effect to Reed's rubber body, though it would consume too much energy. Under Reed's astonished gaze, Alex's body grew thinner and longer, then, like a loach, slithering out of Reed's clutches. "Susan!" Reed cried out in shock, his body expanding like a giant canvas, seemingly trying to completely envelop Alex. Hearing Reed's cries, Susan's face darkened. She slowly straightened, her hands spread open, and moved them up and down, as if playing with something. Alex, free of Reed's clutches, immediately activated teleportation to escape. However, it failed again. Alex immediately thought of the Invisible Woman's invisibility field. It was the only one of the Fantastic Four's abilities that could possibly interfere with teleportation. Alex suspected it was most likely a gravitational field. Quickly thinking, Alex decided not to leave, but to prepare for battle. Reed's control of his body became even more effective, and before Alex could escape, he successfully enveloped him once more. This time, Reed left no room for maneuver, firmly trapping Alex inside. Trapped once again, Alex immediately released the 10 steel balls he had on his body. However, the magnetic field steel balls, once invincible, were once again defeated. Reed's rubber body had become almost immune to physical attacks. Upon contact with Reed's body, the steel balls, accelerated by the magnetic field, bounced back. After several consecutive rebounds, the speed of the steel balls was almost beyond Alex's control, nearly injuring Alex himself. "This ability is even better than mine." Alex retracted the steel balls, which were about to lose control, and looked at Reed, who had completely sealed himself off, with admiration, even a hint of envy at Reed's ability. "Surrender immediately, and I will let you out," Reed immediately began to persuade Alex with a sincere voice. Alex, feeling both amused and embarrassed, shrugged and said, "We've just finished warming up, now it's time to get serious." "Seriously?" Alex's voice echoed, receiving varying reactions from the Fantastic Four. Some ignored him, some looked playful, and still others lost in thought. "Watch out, Reed," Alex shouted back, his body suddenly radiating a fiery red light, like the dawn of a rising sun piercing the darkness, filled with unstoppable momentum and boundless vitality. Alex's crimson energy surge, now unleashed by his power, rivaled a solar storm. The immense energy instantly ripped Reed's body into a sieve. Though a few of the holes were created by Reed himself, the damage was still unimaginably severe. Reed was severely injured and could no longer maintain his body. Alex walked out with a swagger, walked to Reed lying on the ground with a faint smile, and asked slowly, "How do you feel, Reed? You are very strong." Reed covered his chest and coughed several times, his face pale. Chapter 350 The Future of Mutants. How could this be? Alex stared at Otto in disbelief, trying to read his expression as a joke, but Otto's calm face held no sign of anything unusual. Otto looked at Alex, his hands clasped over his chest, and continued, "Humanity can never exterminate mutants, and mutants cannot live without humanity. Humanity and mutants share the same origin." At this point, Otto paused briefly and sighed deeply. Humanity and mutants will eventually merge? This is a historical necessity. However, the process will inevitably involve bloodshed and sacrifice. Although Alex disliked Otto's behavior and actions, he had great faith in his words. Hearing Otto's last words, Alex stood up excitedly, staring at Otto with shining eyes. Alex wasn't afraid of bloodshed and sacrifice, but only of the prospect of losing hope. But in an instant, Otto's words completely extinguished Alex's newly ignited hope, and this process could very well last a very long time, tens of thousands of years, even hundreds of thousands or millions of years. Thousands of years? Hundreds of thousands of years. Alex was stunned, wanting to rush over and beat Otto to pulp. Hemmed and hawing between hope and despair, Alex felt lost and bewildered. "Otto, isn't there a way to speed this up?" Tens of thousands of years was beyond Alex's imagination. Even if he survived such a lengthy period, he'd likely be driven mad by the unpredictable reality. Otto fell silent after hearing this, and after a long pause, he spoke, "That's all I can say. The rest is up to you to discover." With that, Otto's body gradually faded into light and vanished, his final, profound words echoing through the air. Alex froze for a moment, took a deep breath, and vanished from the palace. He reappeared in the blue zone of the moon, the latest home of the Inhuman capital, Atlan. "Alex, what are you doing here?" Crystal, outside the Atlan Inhuman royal palace, was leading the Inhuman civilians in rebuilding Atlan. Seeing Alex appear, she rushed over to greet him, her face brimming with joy. "Alex, are you here to see me?" Alex's face flushed with embarrassment. Crystal had been on the moon ever since Atlan relocated there, and Alex hadn't even come to see her. "I knew you weren't here to see me." Crystal saw through Alex's thoughts at a glance. She was sad, but her face showed no trace of it. She forced a smile, slapped Alex's chest, and complained, changing the subject. "Tell me, what brings you to Atlan?" Alex lowered his head slightly in guilt, not noticing the fleeting sadness on Crystal's face. Hearing Crystal bring it up, Alex quickly raised his head, his expression serious, and said urgently, "I'm here to see Black Bolt and Medusa. I have something important to discuss. I knew you were looking for them." Hearing that Alex was indeed on a serious note, Crystal couldn't bear to pester Alex any further. She grumbled, pointing towards the palace behind her without turning back, her face filled with resentment. "Go. They're all in there." Alex felt even more awkward, not knowing whether to leave or stay. He froze in his place. Seeing Alex's dilemma, Crystal felt a little embarrassed and reached out to give him a sharp shove. "Go. Don't waste your time here, I'll come back to see you after we are done." Alex stumbled forward, steadied himself, turned to look at Crystal, and said something solemnly before quickly heading into the royal quarters. A moment later, Alex spotted Tetanus, a large dog, squatting at the doorway, bored and drowsy. "Hi." Alex greeted the eccentric big dog and walked straight in. Black Bolt, who was meditating, immediately opened his eyes, with a terrifying gleam in his eyes. Meditation helps Black Bolt control his abilities, and whenever he has free time, he will close his eyes and meditate. Black Bolt stood up and looked at Alex with a confused look on his face. Medusa didn't pay attention to her surroundings, so Black Bolt naturally couldn't express his doubts. Fortunately, Alex had telepathy, and he tried to connect to Black Bolt's mind for the purpose of communication. "We have completely fallen out with humans." Alex smiled bitterly, took the initiative to find a place to sit down, and began to narrate to Black Bolt. After a lengthy speech, Alex quickly concluded, "I've decided to take the mutant home and completely separate ourselves from humanity, and build our own free city on the moon." After declaring his decision, Alex stared intently at Black Bolt and stated the purpose of his trip. "So, I hope to gain Atlan's help." The mutant home had developed for decades, but ultimately could not compete with the Inhumans. The idea of building a city for mutants on the moon was incredibly difficult, practically impossible. The moon's climate, gravity, and other factors severely impacted mutant survival. Only a city like Atlan could ensure the safety and normal survival of the mutant home. Black Bolt frowned, pondering for a moment before shaking his head resolutely. He thought to himself, the Inhumans are just copying others. They could never build Atlan on their own. The Inhumans' technological level far surpassed that of Earth humans, but this was based on advanced alien civilizations. Many technologies, such as Atlan's protective shields and anti-gravity devices, were still unknown to the Inhumans themselves. Alex felt a little disappointed listening to Black Bolt's words, but he also knew he wasn't lying. Filled with disappointment, Alex apologized and turned to leave. Just then, Medusa walked in, surprised to see Alex. "Alex, you're really here? I thought Crystal was lying." "Hello, Medusa," Alex said, his face gloomy. He gave a dry laugh and a wave of greeting, then walked past Medusa to chat with Crystal before leaving. Medusa looked at the distraught Alex, then turned to look at Black Bolt, her face full of inquiry. What happened? What happened to Alex? Although Black Bolt and Medusa did not have telepathy, they had been together for decades and had long been in tune with each other. They could tell what the other was saying with just a glance. After Black Bolt's brief introduction, Medusa immediately understood and turned to call out to Alex, who was about to leave. "Alex, maybe I have a way." "You have a way?" "Really?" Alex was stunned at first, as if to confirm what Medusa said, then turned around and looked at Medusa with inexplicable surprise, but soon his face became sad again. "Thank you, Medusa, it's just Atlan." Before Alex could finish, Medusa interrupted him with a smile. "It has nothing to do with Atlan." "Huh?" Alex tilted his head and looked at Medusa with a silly face. "Building a free city for mutants doesn't necessarily have to be on the moon." Medusa's head flicked slightly, her red hair dancing with a captivating glow. Alex expected Medusa to say something, but instead of that, he was disappointed. He shook his head with a wry smile and said, "Earth has been overrun by humans. Mutants have nowhere to hide. Although the mysterious valley where the mutant home is currently hidden is quite secluded, Alex believes it won't be safe forever and will eventually be discovered by humans." "Not Earth? Not Earth?" Alex looked at Medusa with bewilderment. "Could it be another planet? But with our technology, we can't establish a presence elsewhere." After all the talk, the answer was that the mutant home's technology wasn't advanced enough to allow for interstellar migration. Medusa, with a confident smile on her face, asked, "Alex, what's the key factor preventing you from surviving on the moon?" "The moon's climate, gravity, and so on." Alex didn't know much about interstellar migration, so he just picked out the key points he could think of. Medusa coughed lightly and summarized, "Basically, it's the environment. An environment completely different from Earth's." That's what I mean." Alex thought about it and realized that it was indeed true. If a planet had an environment similar to Earth's, Alex wouldn't have to worry about the mutant home adapting to it. At most, it would be like moving from New York to the Wild West. Then create a planet with an environment similar to Earth's? Medusa's words petrified Alex. Even the usually expressionless Black Bolt was unusually stunned. Even Tetanus, the large dog at the gate, couldn't help but turn his head and look over, his eyes wide. After a while, Alex slowly came back to his senses and turned to look at Medusa with an hesitant look. "Are you sure you are not joking, Medusa?" "Of course I'm not joking, I'm serious." Medusa seemed not to notice the expressions of the people and dogs present. She looked at Alex and explained seriously, "In fact, building a planet is not as difficult as you think, especially for you." Alex looked at Medusa seriously, and after making sure that she was really not joking, he didn't feel nervous. "Can you be more specific, Medusa? The planet doesn't need to be too big. After all, it's just a home for you mutants to live in." Medusa turned into an astronomer and began to teach Alex how to build a planet. Create another planet in the Earth's orbit. As long as it is built properly, it can have an environment exactly the same as the Earth. Is this really possible? Alex didn't know much about astrophysics. The little knowledge he had about gravity told Alex that what Medusa said was a bit unreliable. The strong gravity of the sun is very likely to suck the asteroid directly into the sun. Medusa saw the doubt in Alex's eyes, chuckled, and explained, "This is a bit complicated to explain. All you need to know is that this is completely feasible. Just strictly calculate and control the asteroid's size, mass, and other key data." Alex remained silent, but his doubts remained. Medusa tilted her head to look at Alex, a little frustrated. "Still don't believe it? I just find it a little unbelievable." Alex couldn't express it directly, so he explained tactfully. "For the specific data and other things, Go back and discuss it with the scientists you know. They'll tell you. Medusa also knew that her plan was shocking, so she stopped talking about it. Instead, she pointed at Alex and said seriously, "Now, I want to talk to you about you." Alex was a little overwhelmed, pointing at his nose in surprise, a look of confusion on his face. "Yes, you?" Medusa nodded, coughed lightly, and walked to a chair, sitting down. She slowly explained, "Building an asteroid seems easy, but it's also incredibly difficult. Only someone like you who possesses the ability to control magnetic fields can do it." Hearing Medusa mention her magnetic field control abilities finally dawned on Alex. In his previous life, the theoretical data for building artificial asteroids was incredibly precise, but actually doing it was nearly impossible. With Earth's technological level, even interstellar travel was difficult, let alone building an asteroid. The materials needed to build an asteroid would be enough to leave all Earthlings speechless. But for Alex, this wasn't a problem at all. The universe is a vacuum, but it's not empty. Instead, it's filled with interstellar dust, countless comets, and stellar debris. Humans can't capture these, but Alex, with his magnetic field control, can easily gather the materials needed to build an asteroid. With the materials, construction is a piece of cake. With Alex's godlike abilities, even creating life was possible, let alone building an asteroid. After figuring it out, Alex grew increasingly excited. His only concern now was whether the asteroid could actually orbit Earth. Alex's requirements weren't high. It didn't have to be exactly like Earth. A slight difference wouldn't matter, as long as it was safe to live in. That was all. "Thank you, Medusa." Alex thanked Medusa solemnly, his heart overflowing with joy. Medusa's suggestion was a life-saving grace for Alex and the entire mutant community. Medusa smiled and accepted Alex's thanks, jokingly saying, "I just hope that if the Inhumans are in trouble in the future, you can provide us with a way out." Building the asteroid was the result of Medusa's careful consideration. It not only created a bright future for the mutants, but also provided a viable path for the Inhumans. The Inhumans needed to grow, and Atlan was no longer sufficient to accommodate the growing population, especially with the arrival of the new Inhumans. Of course, Alex agreed with a firm expression, then left a royal quarter with a smile that was hard to conceal. Outside the royal area, Crystal was eagerly waiting. When she saw Alex coming out, she quickly ran over, her face full of surprise. "What's wrong? You look so happy." Alex looked up at Crystal, suddenly stretched out his arms to hug Crystal, and shouted excitedly, "Crystal, mutants finally have a bright future." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.